Hello and welcome to In the Roud. Greetings and salutations, dear listeners. My name is Matt Quinn and welcome to another episode of In the Roud, a folk song podcast. Join me as we travel through the world of traditional folk song, one song per episode in the order they appear in the Roud Index. Each episode will feature two guests, one providing an historical look at the song, while the other will be a singer to talk about their own version of the song. So let's get going. This week's song is Roud 35, that's Child Ballad number 39, Tam Lin, an epic song if ever there was one. Later on, we'll hear from our singer guest, Piers Cawley, but for now, let's have a look at the song's history with a brand new historical contributor, Amy Leach. Well, hello and welcome to In the Roud, Amy Leach, hello.
Hi Matt, how's it going?
Not too bad at all, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Hi.
Good, glad to hear it. Oh, it's great to have you on here and nice to see you. It's been it's been 10 months actually since we last saw each other. I think we were in a concert together at Saltburn Folk Festival, weren't we?
Yeah, that was fab, all about ballads.
That was a ballad concert. It was you and me and George Sansom and Holly Clark and John Doran and someone else.
Sophie Crawford.
Sophie Crawford was in it as
Yeah.
well. That's right. Sophie and George do the queer folk thing. George and I have our duo. We all collaborated and it was all fabulous. Yeah, it was 10 months ago we last saw each other. That was in person. And because I think we've sort of kind of known each other for quite a long time, but without actually speaking to each other.
No, exactly. I think the time before the ballad concert, I think you were playing Under the Sea at Sidmouth for
Oh,
our
yes.
clog dance.
Yes, of course. The new Kingsman Clog and you
Things
guys
you
got
find
me.
yourself doing in the folk world.
Yeah, that's right. And that's right. And you were on the folk music degree, Newcastle, were you? Or you were just
Yeah.
around? You did it.
No, I did the degree.
When did you join?
I joined 15 years ago in 2010.
Oh, okay, so you were 2 years below me. I
Yeah.
joined in 2008. So we were obviously just at the very least aware of each other back then.
Yeah.
But we just weren't in the same circle at all.
No, it's
I
funny
think,
that, isn't it?
So, and here we are now, collaborating on something. So it's just, you never know what's going to happen and who you know. So I don't know if you had this. Sorry, listeners, we will get to the history of Tam Lin in a minute. I only found this out when I interviewed Sophie Crawford for the podcast when she was on in the last season, that had her college that she went to persuaded her to not do music as a degree, and she went off and did something else somewhere else. Had they not persuaded her to not take music at university, she would have come to the folk degree and been in my year group.
Oh,
And
it's like a fork in the road. What a shame.
yeah, we could have. Yeah, so consequently, I met Sophie about 2 years ago instead of. I can't even do the maths. 17 years ago, if it's 2 years longer than you, I was on there. So anyway, there's that. So it's great to have you on here, and yeah, brilliant that you're up doing this stuff. This is the Tam Lin. We've got a biggie today. This one, nice,
It is
juicy
the big
subject
one.
matter. Tam Lin, Roud 35, Child 39. Let's get stuck in to this. You're rubbing your hands together in an evil way. As usual with these segments on the podcast, give us what's the song about and what is the plot of Tam Lin?
Okay, doke, buckle in. So, Tam Lin goes under lots of names, but all quite similar. So, Tam Lin, Tammy Lane, True Tamis, Tambling, and then by the female character in the song as well. So, it's often known as Lady Margaret or by Janet of Carter Hall. So, I'm going to give you every single plot point it could possibly contain. It
in
doesn't
in
have all these.
in one
So,
bumper song. You need to
yeah.
sing this. You need to like create one
Oh
bumper
no,
version.
there's not enough time in the day. So,
Yeah,
um,
next time we do a ballad concert at Saltburn, it could just be you singing a
yeah,
bumper Tam Lin.
every single plot point in Tam
Yeah.
Lin. So,
Anyway,
um, very, very few oral tradition versions have even half of these plot points, but
right.
it kind of works regardless. It's like a choose your own adventure. So, the young women are warned, especially the young virgins, not to go to a place called Carterhaugh. Now, that's a real place near Selkirk, kind of where the Ettrick and the Arrow meet. So, not to go to this wooded place called Carterhaugh, and that if you do go, you'd have to leave either your mantle there, so your cloak, or your maidenhead. Um,
Ah, yes.
and they're warned that sometimes they're warned that Tam Lin's there, that's his domain. So Janet or Margaret is actually tempted to go and trots on down. In some versions, she sees the woods growing green, or she kind of is kind of lured there, and she starts pulling at kind of leaves or roses or nuts in this forest area. Um, and that's kind of a like the pulling nuts thing is like if like the Nutting Girl, that's kind of like
Oh
often
yeah, yeah.
followed by that's often followed by sex.
Yes,
This
indeed.
kind of motif. Yeah.
Yeah.
So she starts pulling at them, and then someone appears who we find out is Tam Lin, and he asks her why she's doing that. Who does she think she is pulling at the tree without his permission? So without the leave of me. And she says, well, I don't need your permission, actually, because my dad gave me this forest and I'll do what I want with it. Um, in some versions, she just trots off at that point and she just leaves. Um, in the version I sing, and in quite a few versions, at that point, Tam Lin rapes her,
Okay.
which is interesting that it is sometimes classed as a romantic ballad, considering that. We can
Yeah.
discuss that later. Um, And then she often asks him, well, since you've done this to me, tell me your name. He sometimes does tell her his name. And then away she goes back home, and she starts to grow green. So she's as green as the grass, which is saying that she's pregnant. So she's become pregnant by him. And at this point, she's pretty sure that he's a fairy or an elf. Um, but it's not always confirmed. But there's that, element of thinking, and he kind of says that like that forest is his domain. It's like he's kind of interrupting that forest. So she goes home, and her dad notices she's pregnant, and she says, this child will bear my name. The child will bear name of no of the lords of this kind of area. So she's saying that it's not a human baby necessarily. Um, and so after that point, um, she goes back to the woods and she's pulling at plants again, but this time she's trying to get kind of herbs or flowers to induce an abortion. And he appears again and says, why are you doing that? He tries to convince her to not do that. At that point, she kind of asks him outright, whether he's human. And he says that he was once human. In some, they name who he was, so it turns out he's from nobility. So kind of Roxburgh's grandson is one that it says. Sometimes he just said, I'm one of God's own make. So to say that, actually he is human, but he then you get a little flashback that he either was kind of stolen as a child, so like this changeling situation, which is a really kind of common motif in fairy folklore in Scotland and Ireland, especially this kind of changeling that he was kind of taken from his family as a baby, or more commonly, that he fell off his horse and the queen of elves or the queen of the fairies entrapped him there in that forest. And he does actually say it's quite nice. He says it's quite pleasant. Um, but he's afraid because every 7 years or so, on Halloween or New Halloween or Halloween's kind of morn, so that's like the early morning, the day after Halloween, um, that the fairy court ride out and they give sacrifice or teened or tithe to hell, to the devil. So they owe the devil a life. They would rather not give a fairy life. They'd rather give a human life. They've got one handy that they've trapped there. And he thinks it will be him because he is fair and full of flesh. So if you know any fleshy blonde men, they better watch out. Um, so at that point, he tells her how to save him from this fate. So he says that between the hour of midnight and 1 a.m., tells her exactly where they're going to be riding by. So often it's at kind of Mile Cross or the Mill Bridge. And he says where they'll be riding. He says which horse will be on. So he names the different colours of the horses. And he tells her that he has to grab him, hold him tight and not let him go, not be afraid, even though he's going to change shape. He's going to do all his shape shifting. I've got a list of what he changes into. It says, fear him not, hold tight to him, and he changes into, these are all the things he could change into. I haven't got them all, but a snake, a toad, an eel, a bear, a lion, a greyhound, a red het gand of iron, so that's iron, or a burning gleed, which is a hot coal. And in most of the versions, she just has to hold tight to him, and then he will become a naked man. He'll become himself. There's one I really like that he becomes a burning gleed, so he becomes a hot coal, and she has to chuck that into the well, and then he becomes a naked man. And then she chucks her mantle around him. In one version, I think she dips him in milk, but I didn't really understand that.
Okay. Yeah, all right, fine.
Gross, isn't it? And she does all that basically. He gives all the instructions, and then he does it. She does it. It works. She saves him. He turns into the man that he is. And the Queen of the Fairies isn't very happy about that. She's raging. And she says that she wishes that she had plucked his twa een out. So she plucked out his two eyes and replaced them with Eno a tree. So replaced them with wooden eyes, which is fabulous. He's obviously going back into the human realm, having seen the fairy world. So she doesn't want him, telling of what he's seen, that kind of second sight that he has. And in one version I saw, or maybe a couple, and it's in Duncan Williamson's one, it's that she wishes that she had taken out his heart's blood and replaced it with a heart of clay or of stone. So and then she just kind of raises her fist and off they go. And very, very few versions actually have them like marrying, but I feel it's implied in quite a few versions that, that there's a happy ending for them both, which is interesting considering the sexual assault in the middle of it. So yeah, that is kind of the whole thing.
It's an epic saga, this one, isn't it? Proper.
It is, yeah. That's it in short.
That's the short version. Wow. Yeah. So, blimey. I mean, I should have been making notes during that, but it's fine. We'll see how we go. So, is this a particular popular song and widespread? I mean, as I've said before in the podcast, so in terms of the revival side, and I will definitely be talking about this with Piers later on. Even an obscure song, in terms of the history of the song or field recordings, if it's an obscure song, all you need is one really well-known folkie to do a version of it, and then everyone knows it.
Yeah.
We had that in the past with something. Can't remember what it was. There was a song where that happened with, but normally it's the one. And with this one, it's fair to say that basically Mike Waterson, in terms of the revival, is the key text for a lot of people. And so, but in terms of, so it's extremely well-known song now, almost only because of Mike Waterson. Obviously, a lot of other people have done it, but the Mike
Which is
Waterson
very interesting though, because there's a very, very Scottish nature to this song.
Yeah.
And before Mike Waterson and Fairport and all these versions, there were very, very, very few English versions, and the English version that there was from kind of the borderlands between.
Sure. But yeah, so
England and Scotland.
it's just yeah that there are loads of people done it, but a,
Mhm.
a lot of people will cite Mike Waterson, and
Yeah.
consequently everyone knows about this song. But pre the revival, in terms of the history of the song and field recordings and printed
Mhm.
sources and just general sort of history, was this a particularly sort of popular and widespread song, or was this relatively sort of not localized, but did it not spread?
It surprisingly didn't spread that far in song form as you might expect it to. It hit kind of the collective imagination, particularly within Scotland. You know, Burns-based Tam and these all these things. You know, it's kind of one of the signature border ballads that any writing about border ballads tends to mention it. Um, it has struck the cultural imagination of, you know, Scotland, England, and beyond. You know, there's countless plays about it. There's countless kind of children's literature that has been based off it, modern day literature. I'm not sure if you've heard of A Court of Thorn and Roses. It's a very popular book series right now. There's a character called Tam Lin in that.
Oh yeah, and
Romanticy.
also there's a film which
There's a film and
which
it's got Joanna Lumley in a bit part in it.
yeah, and Ian McShane, Ava Gardner, and
Yeah.
to my shame, I haven't seen it. Call
I really
myself
want to see. I saw the trailer. I thought it looked fabulous.
yeah, well I do own it on Blu-ray. It's on my shelves downstairs, and I still
Oh, okay.
haven't.
That's what you're doing after this.
Sorry to apologies to name drop here, but John Bowden, who lives 20 minutes away from me, and I have been meaning to get together and watch it because
Yeah,
he said, "Oh, we
amazing.
should watch it," and I said, "Well, I've got it." So yeah,
Send me a review.
so it's a British folk horror film from 1970 called I think most commonly called The Ballad of Tam Lin, but it's also called Tam Lin or The Devil's Widow or The Devil's Woman, depending on which territory it was released in. But yeah, 1970 British folk horror. Uh, yeah, and so it even made it into a film.
Exactly. And I feel
Yeah.
like the ideas from the song and the plot has spread so much further than potentially the number of actual source recordings there are of it, which is really
Well,
interesting.
it's so as I
Um,
said, it's so epic that
it is.
you almost can't fail to be swept up in it. Whoever's singing it, whoever's singing it, or whoever's put it in a book or something, you just read it and you get swept up in it, and people make things out of it. You know.
And so much of it has these themes that are really pertinent to society at different points. There's kind of themes of like recovery and transformation, um, and the supernatural elements in the folklore. You know, there's a lot from traditional folklore that is seen in this ballad, and there's a lot that potentially could have come from this ballad. So it's both kind of shaped the culture it exists within, as well as being representative of that culture.
Yeah. And I was looking at the Roud Index as I always do. The Roud Index has 80 entries for this
Yeah.
song, but as I keep saying, hammer it home. That's probably only going to be a rough estimate, maybe 30, even
Mm-hmm.
less, maybe different unique versions because of duplicates and things. But 80 is not, it's not inconsiderable, but there are songs that have significantly more, and there are some songs that have one
Mm-hmm.
entry, depending on. But you can break it down to country, and that gives you a rough idea of that 80. Scotland has 48, which is understandable. Northern Ireland, 17. The rest of Ireland, 5. And there's 2 in the USA and 1 Canada/USA, but it's actually USA. As far as the Roud Index is concerned, it's basically Scotland, Northern Ireland, and then a handful in the Republic of Ireland and America.
And arguably, you know, you could surmise that those versions have traveled through from Scotland.
Certainly, the ones in America, you can imagine, have gone through people who have emigrated and
Yeah.
whatever. And
And there's a
so,
lot of cultural exchange between Scotland and Ireland, so that's not surprising.
indeed, and I think both of them are actually from Scarborough in the USA, a place called Scarborough in the USA. I think we'll come to that later because they're in Bronson. But yeah,
One of the main kind of features of this tale is found in Greek mythology, and there's elements that are quite similar between Scandinavian tales as well. So when you're looking at the story, really it's international, but then, there's something very particular about how it was disseminated in Scottish writing that means that it's kind of been held as a real kind of example of Scotland's unique, and I say that doing little parentheses,
Yeah.
identity. Yeah.
And so but then I guess didn't actually have a chance to read the reams and reams of text that Child wrote
Mhm.
in his thing, but he did write like almost 3 or 4 pages of stuff, and I do see the word Denmark quite a lot, and
Yeah.
so and so as usual, he's tried to, whether he's tried to successful or not, sort of link it to a lot of Norse stuff. Child was
Mhm.
very keen on that, at trying linking all these old ballads back to potential Norse origins or Arthurian legend as well. They try and link it back to one or the other or both occasionally.
Well, like fairy lore between Scandinavia and Scotland and a lot of different countries, there are a lot of similarities in it. So I think that's kind of where those ties are really close.
Yeah, and I do have on my shelves, and I forgot to get them off my shelf and look through them, but I've got all 3 volumes of the translated ancient Danish ballads, and
Oh, brilliant.
I meant to go through and actually have a look and see if any of them vaguely resembled Tam Lin,
Yeah.
because I did find one that was related to something. The Hind Etin episode 2 weeks ago, we had
Yeah.
Hind Etin, and there was a song in there that was clearly linked
Yeah.
somehow to Hind Etin. So
Emily Lyle, in her article about it, she cited one, I think it was called Helgi, um, that was kind of the closest one
okay,
in Scandinavian lore.
yeah, it may very well be in those books on my shelf, but yes.
Mhm.
Yeah, so yeah, and I've actually just looked on I filtered the Roud Index down through sound recordings, 10 in Northern Ireland, 8 in Scotland. So
Yeah.
obviously, people who sang it in Northern Ireland were recorded a lot more than the Scottish people, or there's always some explanation for
Mhm.
that. But and so as far as international, yes, it spread to America, but not that much really.
Yeah.
But then all we are going on, as Steve Roud always says, all we are going
Yeah.
on really is the evidence that we have so far, and
Exactly.
it may have occurred elsewhere in America, but if Steve hasn't indexed those recordings or those books, then it doesn't appear in the red index. So all we can go on is the evidence we have so far, and so far about 2 or 3 Americas. Otherwise, it's Scotland and Ireland, basically. So how far back can we trace this song? What do we have like a
Okay.
do we have a particular year that we can go back to? Because sometimes we can, I guess not with this song, but sometimes you can say we know it
Yeah.
was written in 1826, and sometimes it's a case of, well, we don't know, but bits of it come from there and there and there. So whatever. Do we have? So we may not have like a proper origin point, but how far back can we take this in its form of Tam Lin?
So it would be reasonable to say at least the 16th century. The first actual written version that pairs this tale to this name would be in Herd's Ancient and Modern Scottish Songs, I think it was called, which was a collection in 1769.
1769.
And
Pretty
that
good.
was Janet of Curtin, Janet, Jannet of Curtin Hall, so a kind of a bastardization of Carter Hall.
Yeah.
And that's kind of more fragmented than the version which, not long after, Johnson's Musical Museum 1796, that's the most complete version.
Oh yeah.
Um,
That
after
that
that,
1769 one.
yeah,
That's the year that book or collection was published, I presume. So, do we have any notes inside there about along the lines of this singer learned it from her mother?
they weren't the very best, the Scottish collectors, at actually saying who they got it off.
Right.
But they
Okay.
did gather a lot of songs and people would send them in. So there's a lot of notes say of like which of their friends wrote to them with some
Okay.
words. But of the Herd one, there wasn't a lot. Of the Johnson's Musical Museum, and as you go later, Scott wrote a lot about who he got his from. So one of the versions that Scott got was from Margaret Laidlaw, who was James Hogg's mother. So it is suggested in all of these kind of free main collectors versions, so Herd, Scott, and Johnson/Burns, it suggested that it was still sung often in the area that the song is about, so in Ettrick and Yarrow and around Selkirk, that it was
Right.
still
Okay.
being sung there. But so that's the first written version that actually traces it.
Okay. So 1769. That
There's
that's still very good innings, though.
well, there's a couple of very interesting things that come before though, Matt. So
Okay. Yeah. Great.
in we go back further, 1558.
Oh,
There's
lovely.
a written record of a license being granted to print a ballad called Tam Lin,
Ooh.
but there's no
Okay.
record of it actually being printed.
And we've no idea what it is really. We just got the
No.
name. Okay.
And I will take you back to the earliest record of it being mentioned, which is in a fascinating book. I'm not sure if anyone's mentioned this yet, because it's actually the first time that quite a few different songs were mentioned, called The Complaint of Scotland, 1549.
Oh,
Do you know about
I
this?
don't think it's been mentioned before. I've heard
Okay,
of
so
it, but I don't think it's
this
been
is
mentioned before.
fascinating book. It's anonymous, but presumably written by someone called, I think it was Robert Wedderburn, but I could be wrong. I didn't write that bit down. So this is considered as propaganda. It's a book, well, kind of a writing that was trying to argue for the unique Scottish culture at a time that it was during a period called the Rough Wooing, where they really wanted the very young Mary Queen of Scots to marry Edward, who was son of Henry VIII.
Yeah.
So it was at a time where it was considered by some in society to be advantageous for the Scottish Queen and the English future king to marry. And this writing, The Complaint of Scotland, was using examples of Scottish culture, in their opinion, to argue for how different Scotland and England were. So, not too dissimilar from arguments you might have seen in around 2014. There were still some kind of looking at those differences between us as reasons for why people would be seeking Scottish independence. So it was just all it said was the tale of the young Tam Lin, so Tamlene. And there was also a reference to the tune, and it's in a kind of a dream sequence where they talk about Dame Scotia and all these things. So it is referenced then. Presumably, it could be the same story, but we just don't know without more.
Exactly. We can't. Yeah. We can. Yeah. We
And
just.
if it
Yeah.
is the same story, that's being referenced as something that's kind of intrinsically kind of part of culture and society. That suggests it'd be quite old for then as well. So who
Yeah.
knows? But I would say at least it must be at least the 16th century. We guess there's quite a few examples of times that this kind of points of these stories pop up. So there was a witch trial in 15, what was it? This is fascinating. It was in 1558, I think. No, bear with me. 1586, a woman called Alison Pearson was charged with being a witch. She was burnt at the stake for it. And in it, she explained a lot of stuff about how she met with her uncle, her dead uncle, who was kind of imprisoned by the Queen of the Elves, and tells some similarities between how Tam Lin was held and how her uncle was. So it's just interesting that whether or not that came from her knowing the story or whether the ballad just reflects very, very commonly held beliefs about how witches operated and how fairies worked and all these things. So, and when push comes to shove, she's facing either actual physical violence as torture,
Yeah.
or at the very least, she's been sleep deprived for days on end.
Indeed.
And
Yes. Of course.
that is torture in itself. And she has to come up with a story. They're telling her, tell us how you've done it, like tell us how you're a witch. And the story that she's reaching to in that moment
Yeah.
is these motifs that we're seeing in that. So it's obviously kind of either very kind of widely held beliefs in what fairies are and how they operate, or it's related to the ballad story itself. It's unlikely that, but it's interesting.
Yeah. There's all sorts of tangents and avenues we could go
Mm.
down, but we've even though I let these episodes run a little long sometimes, we still have to keep to the main subject. But it's all very interesting
Right.
stuff. So yeah, so what happens to the song since 1769?
Yeah.
Does is that version at 1769, is that a relatively, what we might say in quotes, a complete version, and then it sort of drifts off a bit, or
1769 is not fully complete, but it's complete enough. It still tells a tale. The 1796, the Johnson Musical Museum, that's very complete, that one. And a fairly similar version pops up in Scots, so the minstrelsy of the Scottish border. And
oh yeah,
he collected lots of different versions in order to kind of pull that one together. And he kind of, again, he emphasized that it was still being sung around the borders where it's written about, and also that it was indicative of a strongly held belief in fairies. He believed that that kind of belief in kind of fairies held very strong in Selkirk, which is interesting. It's really captured the Scottish imagination and then started spreading beyond there in all its different forms after that point, which is interesting because it's kind of popularity in fairy beliefs kind of comes and goes in waves, and that it kind of survived the Scottish Enlightenment. It still remained really kind of interest even at a time of like rationalization, but it shifted from being people kind of talking about something they might have at some point believed to be true and believed in fairies themselves to being kind of an interesting relic. And yeah, carried on. There's loads of different kind of versions and different ballad collectors. So it's in Crawford a couple of times. There's one version in Greg Duncan. It's kind of one that pops up with a version here or there,
yeah,
but not hundreds of versions. So if you're familiar with the Greg Duncan collection, it's a particular point in time in a particular area of Scotland up in the northeast in Aberdeenshire. They collected just all the versions of songs that people were singing then or knew of. And so there's only one version that, which suggests it's not hugely popular amongst singers, but it's never gone away.
right, sure. And we know that in always a starting point for a lot of ballads is the actual Child collection, Francis James Child, and we've got 9 versions, I think we said, didn't we, in Child?
Yeah, there's a few that he refers to, but kind of discounts as either being more related to other ballads like The Wee Wee Man, or so fragmentary that you couldn't really tell if they were that or not.
Yeah, sure. I'm just having a quick tally, just out of curiosity to see how
Mhm.
many verses each version has in Child.
I think the
Um,
longest is 42,
yeah, that's what I've just got
the
to.
Johnson one, I think.
Because yeah, version A has 42,
Hmm.
and that's where did we say that was? The Johnson's Scots Museum.
Yeah,
That's right. Communicated by Robert Burns.
yeah. Communicated by means that he wasn't happy when he found a version that he considered incomplete. Um, I like to let the mystery be, but he doesn't. So he did amalgamate certain versions. And yes, he probably did put a literary touch on some of the verses, but it wasn't necessarily all of his own making.
Sure, yeah. And I've raced on a bit. So yeah, that's a epic 42 verse version. I
Yeah,
can't off the top of my head remember when you get to Mike Waterson how long his version was, but it was like 11 minutes or something to sing.
yeah, well,
Version B, we've got Glenn Riddle's manuscript. Is that what I'm reading right?
yeah,
Yeah, and that's 41 verses. That's pretty epic as
oh, yeah,
well.
it's lengthy too.
Version C is Heard, the ancient and modern Scots song,
Yeah.
1769. 10 verses, but we've got the dots before verse 1 and after verse 10, implying that there is more to it than just the 10 verses in
Mhm.
Child.
And the Glenn Riddle manuscripts are linked to Burns as well. So what you're seeing in those different versions are kind of all the different versions that have gone into the one that's gone into Johnson.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
it's like the same bit of research, but there are variations between them.
sure, yeah. And then version D, there's quite a few instances of Motherwell here. The version D in Child's Motherwell's manuscript, a North Country version,
Yeah.
1844, I think, from the recitation of an old woman. Oh, how
Hmm.
helpful.
Very
Yeah,
helpful.
but but yeah, so that's 34 verses, I think that one. That's quite
Hmm.
long as well. Um, I'm getting confused. My PDF copy, Bronson, doesn't of Child isn't the easiest to navigate sometimes.
Mm.
Version E, Motherwell's Notebook is what it says. So the
Yeah.
Motherwell's Notebook.
And
With,
quite a lot of the
with
Motherwell versions went to Scott, I believe.
yeah, yeah, I imagine so. 21 verses in that one. Motherwell's version F in Child is Motherwell's manuscript from the
Hmm.
recitation of Widow McCormick. At least you get
Oh,
the surname in that one.
yeah.
1825, that's not bad.
Doesn't get a name.
And that's
Yeah.
17 verses. And then I'd really want to have a physical copy of Child because my PDF gets very uncomfortable if I try and zoom in. Version G in Child from Buchan's manuscript,
Yeah.
but it's also Motherwell as well. And that has 59 verses.
Oh, Jings. Thanks for that.
And then version H in Child, Campbell manuscript
Hmm.
with 15 verses, but there are dots between verses 12 and 13. So we're looking at there's some bits missing from the story there.
Yeah.
And then version I in Child to finish, if that's what makes up nine. Minstrelsy of the Scottish Border,
Yeah.
1833, which takes us to. Ooh, is it going to be longer than? It's going to be 56 verses.
Yeah. And that's because there'll be some from various of those earlier ones
Yeah, of course.
that have made it up.
Indeed. So they yeah, as we always say on the podcast, don't take anything at face value. You have to
Mm.
don't take that as gospel. Find out where even in Child, find out where Child got it from and go back to
Yeah.
what was there, see what Child did to it or anyway. So epic stuff. So obviously when you get songs that are this epic in scope and narrative, it genuinely tends to sort of imply that it's quite old. Normally,
Mm.
you don't get many modern epics in terms of songs, but I mean, also, do you it, with its epic structure and sort of scope and things, has the kind of plot as an overall arc kind of changed at all, or has it stayed that core essence, but the details change, or has it been has there been a major sort of seismic shift in the plot of the song?
There's been a shift in the length, in most versions being sung being fragments of it, so parts of the story, so not the full bit being told.
Right.
Um, of the ones that were collected amongst source singers, fairly few of them. I actually don't know of any. I'm not going to say none of them, but I can't recall any of them having that bit where she goes back home and then goes back to the woods.
Okay.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's kind of just been, over the years, slightly shortened down. Now, the full story has never gone away, especially not in the way that it's been told through kind of theatre and different kinds of kind of literature and all that. But in terms of the way that singers have approached it, it's definitely just they've they cut the wheat from the chaff, really. And
Yeah.
they've gone for the big bits, and there's the kind of key things that you'll always see, the stuff around the transformation and hold me tight and fear no ill, I'm the father of your child, and these kind of classic bits. But and then I suppose that element of the directness. So in that kind of in the versions in Johnson and Heard, it doesn't have them having sex or him raping her.
Right.
That appears in the later versions. Um, and that is a theme that is seen in a lot of different ballads. And it might be that at the time it was being sung, but they didn't want to write it down, or it might have been, that there was just a shift in how society was talking about that or
Yeah.
singing about that.
And then you get a lot of collectors did clean up the songs when they collected them, because
Well,
they
exactly.
didn't feel that verse was fit for publication and all
And
that
that
sort of
becomes,
thing.
it takes it out of that private realm of like ballad singing and that kind of more private realm of singing ballads, women singing ballads to other women, and what the
Yeah.
kind of meaning might be in a woman singing a ballad like that to another woman, whether it's talking about shared experiences, giving warnings, giving kind of comfort. And then it becomes this kind of this public ballad and this piece of kind of national, an artifact of national culture. And suddenly, yeah, it's got a different weight, and maybe you don't want to be saying the same kind of things that would be considered bawdy in certain eras.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, generally it just shifts shorter, and it just kind of they keep the key points. Like very few versions have him telling her exactly how to save him, and then her doing all those things where you save. I'm sure if you've ever tried cutting down a ballad, you just cut down the bit where you say, and then he told her to do this, and that's exactly what she did, and they sing it all over again.
Yeah,
Um,
I've done it many times with that sort of thing, and
yeah.
occasionally had to cut characters out altogether just to make it. There was one of the things this podcast is in association with is Carl Sinfield's books, Sing Yonder, which was sort of
Mhm.
a beginner's introduction to folk songs, but going through the Roud Index in order, same as me. And he's just about to release volume 9 of that, so I'm a bit behind him, but I'm
Oh,
producing this faster than he is. Um, and
not that it's
I
a competition.
no, no, yes. And I had to do some editing for him. Well, I didn't have to, but he asked me to, and I happily obliged. There was a ballad in Volume 8, I think it was in Robin Hood and Queen Catherine, which was
Mhm.
one of these 40-verse Robin Hood child ballads that he needed to get condensed. Yeah, he needed me to do a new setting of it, write a tune for it, and edit it down
Mhm.
so that it fitted on a page the size of the Sing Yonder book. So I had to get it down to a
Mhm.
maximum of 19 verses from 36. And I basically, won't bore people. We'll get to this song in about a year or two's time. But I basically had to get rid of the Bishop of Hereford completely. The Bishop of
Mhm.
Hereford was left on the cutting room floor. Yeah, it didn't matter. Sometimes you have to pare it down to just the main story beats,
Yeah.
without too much detail. But then we come to the revival side. A lot of the revival side people do relish the length, and even
Yeah.
one field recording that I actually own, which we'll come to later on,
Mhm.
Duncan Williamson. That's an 8.5 minute track.
That's because he's a storyteller.
That's because
Um,
he's a storyteller.
and
Yeah,
that shows. And a lot of the revival singers, you're right, added a lot of the story back in because once you go back to the written records of what was being sung, particularly around 18th, 19th century, it was a lot more kind of fleshed out. And then when you get to 20th century, yeah, what was left of the source recorders was much shorter.
yeah, yeah,
It's
definitely.
interesting, yeah. But I think that just shows like the phases of what people are interested in. And I think like with stuff like fairies, people it does just go in and out of popularity. People feeling like it's interesting or feeling like it's just a bit naff.
A bit childish, the fairies
Yeah,
and things,
exactly. Some people do think it's just a bit like daft and like I know a lot of people who say they're not really into supernatural ballads at
Yeah,
all. Like it's just not their bag because I think they think it's like, we spend so much time trying to make people take us seriously as, folk singers, as traditional
yeah.
singers. And then you get on stage and sing a song about the Queen of the Fairies, and then you're like, oh, maybe I understand why no one's taking me seriously.
Song about Queen of the Fairies with a chorus with a lot of foldy rolls and stuff, and you
Yeah,
think,
exactly. Like, oh,
but
okay.
I'm learning to embrace the nonsense choruses, and I really fully commit to them, and and stuff. But nevertheless, the point is still there. It's
Yeah,
sometimes a bit odd, but I think if you just commit to something, I think anyone can take it seriously. It's a
exactly.
thing. But yeah, it's there's this is. I mean, we've been talking for 47 minutes at the moment. I think almost 50 minutes, and we've barely scratched the surface with
There's so much.
what we could actually talk about. But nevertheless, you did say you wanted to return to the subject of some people. refer to this as a romantic ballad or put it in
Mhm.
the field of romantic ballads. Yet in a lot of versions there is an act of not romance in the slightest.
Exactly. It is interesting, and I wonder if it stems from kind of a view, why would a woman do such a heroic endeavor for a man if not for romance? Um, the female character in the song, so Janet or Margaret, is an extraordinary example of a woman in a traditional ballad. There was an amazing stat somewhere. It was that she's one of only four women in the entire child collection of ballads that has both an personal and economically successful ending.
Wow.
She is the only people who have agency and take action in this song are women. So it's Queen of the Fairies and her. Tam Lin doesn't do anything.
And it's astonishing then the song is named after him.
Yeah.
We had this on the we had this on the podcast with something else.
Hmm.
But crucially, the conversation came up on the Patreon. We did an episode on the song "Lovely Joan," um,
Yeah.
when but that song is about her because she's the guy tries to sort of in some versions just seduce her, but it's normally sexual assault or at least proposes,
Mhm.
let's go off and have some fun together and whatever, and she robs him basically and leaves him.
Yeah.
The song is about her, but you get some songs. We covered, I think it was in season two, we covered The Baffled Knight, which is kind of the same ish plot of Lovely Joan in a lot of ways, but the song title is The Baffled Knight, not about the woman,
Yeah.
even though she's the one that wins
Exactly.
the day. And so interesting that then this song is called Tam Lin, and
Yeah.
there's a whole patriarchy thing about songs being titled with the man's name, even though
Yeah.
he had nothing to do with the plot, really.
And she's really remarkable. And, there's a thesis written about it by someone called Charlotte Conan. That was really interesting. All about how does she manage to succeed at so many examples that women of her era were not successful at, particularly if you place it in Scotland. She tried to get an abortion and she didn't have any punitive measures for that. So this isn't a kind of moral bashing ballad. This one, it's like not there to try and uphold society's expectations. It's actually there, potentially it serves as a challenge to it. She owns land, so the land has been passed down to her by her father, which would be unusual. She says that she wants the Wayne to have her name, so that would be unusual. Normally it would be the father's name passed down. um she kind of, if you take it that she went back home and her dad found out she was pregnant and then she went back out again, it suggests that she achieved this heroic feat whilst visibly pregnant,
Yeah.
uh, which all of it in itself is remarkable and doesn't really chime in with how women would have had opportunities or been represented at the time. So then it's interesting if you think, is this a song that is being sung by women? If so, I kind of understand why women would be singing this song. Or is this a song that was kind of taken on by that literary element? Is that more kind of the influence here? And if so, why would they be representing women in this way?
Yeah. Indeed, yes. I have no real response to that. I just, yes, it's fascinating.
Yeah, it is. So just ignore Tam Lin. It's not about him.
Indeed.
I don't find any of it romantic. None of it's romantic. And I find that to be a kind of sort of antiquated bit of fluff that's put around the song.
Yeah. And you get
I
all
think it's
these
a
folk.
heroic one. And often it is counted as a heroic ballad. It's
Yeah.
kind of classed in that category as well. And I think that's much more fitting. And the hero is not Tam Lin, it's
And
Janet or Margaret.
I think some of these songs should be because you do get songs, yeah, called things like the undaunted female and
Yeah,
the female cabin boy and all this stuff, which is great. But then songs like the baffled knight,
yeah.
there's a whole thing about. It depends. Certainly with the baffled knight, we had this discussion because Vic Gammon was the singer guest for that one, and we did this whole discussion about whether whether you view the song as it's about the knight getting baffled and beaten by the woman,
Hmm.
or whether it's about a woman who is managing to stave off a seduction attempt. You know, you could look at it
Yeah.
either way, and consequently, a lot of people call it the baffled night. But then, if you call it "Blow Away the Morning Dew," like one of the choruses is called, then that debate isn't. You don't need to bother with it.
Yeah, totally.
So you could call this something. I don't know. I mean, the problem is this song. I guess also this could just be calling it Tam Lin as a way to differentiate it from other ballads, because as we
The
were talking
others.
about
Yeah.
before we started recording, there's a lot of Margarets in child
Yeah.
ballads. And in fact, in 2 episodes' time on the podcast, we're coming to the song "Proud Lady Margaret," and the source recording that I've got to recommend in a few minutes is called Lady Margaret, but it's not Proud Lady Margaret; it's Tam Lin.
Lady Margaret. But the first written version of its name is 1549 as Tam Lin.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's like,
exactly. It doesn't.
yeah,
My argument doesn't work there at all, but
yeah,
nevertheless, so
got you.
so thanks for that. But anyway, it's fine. But yeah, but anyway, there's all sorts of angles to sort of consider
Yeah.
when coming to this sort of stuff. But anyway, yes, yeah, not really romantic at all. Anyway, we've as I said we've barely scratched the surface, but we should probably start to round things up. Recommended listening. There
Yeah.
aren't a huge amount of things. There's,
No.
as I said, sound recordings linked on the Roud Index amount to about 20. But most of them, I haven't actually been able to go in and check. I mean, I think quite a few of them probably do exist on YouTube, but the actual recordings for a lot of them are sort of hidden away, maybe in things like the Irish Traditional Music Archive
Yeah.
and some of the Hugh Shields collection and another collection, the Peter Hall Sound Collection. That's what I was trying to find. Compiled and edited by Tom Spears, the wonderful Tom Spears. Otherwise, there's some, but there are some. What's the word? There are some available
Yeah.
field recordings of this, and there was two for the price of one, essentially. That you were going to mention.
Yeah. So there's a CD of recordings from the School of Scottish Studies by Hamish Henderson called the Muckle Sangs. So Muckle Sang is the big songs, and that refers to these kind of ballads. So this would be a great example of a Muckle Sang.
Oh, and
Um,
is that a label called Green Tracks? I think, isn't it?
yes, that's on Green
With an
Tracks. Yeah,
X, right, with an X at the
yeah.
end. Yeah.
And that's the first one's Betsy Johnson, who I have only ever heard her singing through this CD. And same with the next one, Willie White. So that's White with a Y in the middle. So those two versions, first one's Lady Margaret, and that's actually a version I sing. Really incredibly haunting, beautiful, stark melody, quite arresting actually to listen to. And that would be considered incomplete technically, but I think it's definitely enough to carry the song. It depends how particular you are as a ballad singer, how complete you want your story to be. And then the second version is Willie White, who I don't I had always presumed that Willie White was related to Betsy and Bryce White, who were travellers, one of the great singing families. But I don't actually know that for a fact. So if anyone's listening and knows that, I would love to know. Thanks. And Betsy Johnson, I believe she was also a Scottish traveller based at that time in Glasgow. But again, I would really, really like to know more about her as well. And then obviously we'll chat in a minute about Duncan Williamson. So all of these examples of this song being kind of carried through in the oral tradition are from these travelling families. And, you know, we owe a massive, massive debt to the travelling community in Scotland for maintaining and continuing to sing and pass on these songs and these remarkable stories when so many settled communities stopped singing them.
Absolutely.
It's really, really. I think there's a relation between all three of those. I can feel there's a familiarity. Even like the Willie White one is just a tiny fragment, and two of them are floating verses that you could argue aren't Tam Lin at all. So there's the rocks may melt, and there's when I'm on the sea, when you are on the sea, pray think of me. But then the last verse has that, And it's really beautiful, the singing of Willie White. Really, really beautiful, quite an intricate approach to singing the melody. Um, and, vaguely similar to the tunes maybe between Duncan Williamson and Betsy Johnson, but not exactly the same. Um, but really nice all the same. Lovely little fragment.
Right, yeah, I've not actually heard them, and I realised that Michael Sang's and all of the other CDs that came out of that
Mm,
sort of line are ones that are not in my collection, and so I must amend that at some point, and I must get round to
yeah.
hearing those ones. But yeah, we've been mentioning Duncan Williamson a handful of times. Scott's singer, storyteller, traveller. There's I don't know if the album came out in '91, but it was certainly the recording was from 1991, and it
Mhm.
went out on an of him singing Lady Margaret. And that
Yes.
might just be because the first line is Lady Margaret, she sat in her high chamber, and it's the opening of the song, therefore that's what he called it. But there's a veteran, hello to our media partner, Veteran Records, veteran CD of Duncan Williamson called Put Another Log on the Fire.
Mhm.
And on there is Lady Margaret. And yeah, Duncan Williamson, fabulous
Incredible, yeah.
singer storyteller, absolutely amazing. And as you said, storyteller. Therefore, that's he liked the longer version of Tam Lin anyway.
And the way he tells that story for song it's quite an incredible thing to listen to the entirety of. It is amazing. Um, that you can definitely see like some of the verses like are very similar between Betsy Johnson's version and Duncan Williamson's, and not very similar to the kind of classic version of the text that Burns Johnson won,
Oh yeah,
1796. It's not actually that similar. A lot of the structure is different. So yeah, it's interesting. It's the same story, but it's gone on a journey.
yeah. And then one of the names. So there are other singers whose
Hmm.
names crop up on places like uh, friend of not she's been on the podcast, but listener of the podcast, Julie Hennigan, did some field recordings of Irish singers, and the recordings are in the University of North Carolina, I believe. And there's a recording of Paddy Tunney
Yeah.
sitting in there, but that's also in the Len. There's also a Paddy Tunney recording in the Len Graham collection of the Irish Traditional Music Archive, and same with Eddie Butcher as well, and someone else. Oh no, another Paddy Tunney. However, a recording of Eddie Butcher did go out on an official LP. I don't have it. I've got quite a lot of the LPs that came out on the Leader label.
Yes. Someone's put it on YouTube though. Someone has put it on YouTube. It's very
There
handy.
we go. Very nice. I'm gonna try and track down a proper LP copy, but it's good to have
Yeah.
the digital tracks. Anyone's unsure, yeah, Leader put out lots of really fantastic LPs of
Yes.
traditional singers and musicians, and they were these gorgeous. I've got a handful of them. They're all out of print and never been re-released in that format on CD or anything. But they're these fantastic grey LPs, or the LP itself. The vinyl was black, but the cover and the casing was all this grey. And you opened it up, and the left hand it opened up in like a twofold thing, but the left one was like a gazillion page booklet with historical notes on the songs and the biography of the singers and photographs and bibliography links and things. And as this is the sort of stuff that you can't get on Spotify. And
No.
I this is my part of my all hail physical media. Those leader LPs are phenomenal, and one of them. Was called Folk Ballads from Donegal and Derry, and on
Mhm.
there is Eddie Butcher singing Bride Stolen by Fairies.
Oh, is that what it's down as? I thought his version was Saturday night is the Halloween night.
Okay, so yeah, Eddie Butcher. There's a version in the Hugh Shields collection, and the first
Yeah.
line is Saturday night is Halloween night, Halloween night or Halloween night.
Halloween night, yeah.
But then there is also okay, Eddie Butcher. Okay, so the one on Leader, the first line is Saturday night and Halloween night, but for the purposes of labeling it on the track listing, they've called
Yeah.
it Bride Stolen by Fairies for some
That's
reason.
great, that title, yeah. And it is, I think I did read that, yeah, that version is The Bride That's Been Stolen by the Fairies, which is a version that's a tale that kind of well, obviously anyone being stolen by fairies has popped up several times in different folk stories, but I think that's been collected a few times in Ireland in particular, the kind of it being the wife that has been stolen.
Right. Yeah. And then Yeah, so anyway, that one's labeled at least as Bride Stolen by Fairies,
Yeah,
but the first line is Saturday night is Halloween night, so it's the same
yeah,
thing. So
yeah, same one. We've got a really jaunty tune, that one, which is compared to a lot of the tunes um, that were collected in Scotland in the 20th century, were kind of more kind of open modalities. It's
that's
got
some
kind of,
modal stuff, yeah.
yeah, some stuff going on. I'm not great with my musical terms,
Well,
unfortunately,
we had.
considering I
I
have a
did.
music degree.
I did open. Yes, I did open the Bronson tunes
Yeah,
and have a look, and we only got. We didn't actually mention Bronson. Let's do a very. That's the recommend listening.
yeah,
Let's now backtrack and do a short Bronson excursion because my
yeah.
stopwatch now says over an hour. So we'll do a
Things,
short. A
okay.
short. Thankfully, he only collected 4 tunes for this one.
And I don't think any of them are necessarily the versions that have been sung by source singers
No,
recorded.
and not even the one that Mike Waterson used. You know,
No, it's interesting. It's almost like everyone's just disregarded that. But I think you could sing this song to any tune. But there's that first one from that was collected in Belfast is really interesting, isn't it?
Belfast 1904, learned from an sung by Anne Carter. Belfast 1904, learned from an old woman in Connemara. And we've got I've got the Zoom settings so you can't hear this concertina, but I'm gonna get myself a note. I'm gonna try and la this. It's not gonna be very good because it
Good luck.
flicks around with the modes.
Hmm.
Um, Bum 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 ba ba bum 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 da dun da 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 bum ba dun ya da 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 ya da da dun 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 dum bum 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 ba 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 bum 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 ba bum 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 dun ya da dun 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 da da dun ba da da.
That first line, what is that? That first line's from something else.
It
From
sounds a
all
bit
your
like Tom Waits.
friends.
I fell asleep down by the stream. It's a bit Tom Waits, The Briar and the
Yeah,
Rose.
no, it's something else I'm thinking of.
Dun yada
Da, da,
dun
da,
bum
da,
bum bum
da,
bum.
da. Anyway, yeah,
But
no,
it's really weird. It goes from major to minor in the same key rather than relative minor. You know,
I'm not skilled enough to sing that. It's incredible.
it's a bit weird. And then we get the second one. It just says Johnson, 1796.
Yeah, so that's the one that was printed and the musical museum. So that's the kind of the Burns number. I sometimes is that tune a bit boring.
Bum ba da 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 bum ba da da bum bum ba da 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 ba da da dun dun da dun da bum 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 ba da. It's that sort of thing. It's
Mm,
relatively sort
yeah,
of. It's a bit more solid and
yeah.
contained, but it's quite interesting. Whistle stop tour. This we've got Janet of Carterhaig. We've got a jig one from Scotland.
It's from the Blakey manuscript, that one, and it was just down as Janet of Carter Hall, but not with any words. So presumably it's for this song, but it could just be that it was a tune for this kind of.
Indeed, 1578.
And I don't think this is 1578. I think it's manuscript 1578, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Um, he was a 19th century engraver of tunes, and he had all these old tunes, but
Ah.
I'm not sure this is 1578.
Okay.
But I'd love to know.
Bum ba dum bum ba dum ba da da dum ba da da dun ba dum da 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 dum ba dum ba da dum ba da da. So it's quite nice, but I have no idea if it actually relates to anything. And then finally, we've got an American one from Scarborough in America, 1937, sung by Margaret Widdermere.
So it's a Scarborough collection. It's not from Scarborough.
Beg your pardon. Thank you very much. This is education for me. 1932. The first stanza learned from Eleanor Wiley, who learned it from her nurse, who was a woman from the northern marshes.
And that's to mean the Northern Marches. So that's the north of England, like by the border.
Yeah. The text as a whole appears to be refashioned, perhaps in good part on the child's D, the fourth one in D, but bum bum ba dun da dee da 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 dee da da dee dum da dum ba da da ya da dum bum ba da ya da. So
Hmm.
that's quite a nice sort of sweeping melody.
Yeah.
Be interesting to try and put that to the words. May Marjorie sat in her castle tower, Sewing at her silken seam, she looked out of the high window, and she saw the leaves growing, growing green. My love, green, my love. That lower W is green, my love. Growing green, my love. And she saw the leaves growing green. That sounds vaguely plausible as a song.
Yeah, very nice.
And there's 21 verses to that one. You can give that a good, and that's called Tam Lane. That's 2 words. Tam.
Yeah.
That's Tam Lane. That one. So yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag of 4 melodies in Bronson, but at least one of them's quite good.
Mm.
Anyway, let's call this to a halt there, because we could have rambled on about this for a long time, but I've got an interview with Piers Cawley coming up, so yeah, I will put the links to as many of those field recordings as I can find, and I'll play clips of them of what I've got as well. This has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for agreeing to be part of this and coming on and sharing your expertise in the matter.
My pleasure. I apologise to anything I've misquoted and to any real ballad scholars out there. You can keep your jobs.
It's all good. It's all good. Yeah, it's all good. I said that 3 times now. But yeah, I'm sure we'll have you back at some point for something else, either on the history side again or as a singer guest even. It'd be great to have you as a singer guest for something. But in the meantime, Amy Leach, thank you very much.
Thanks, Matt.
A huge thanks again to Amy Leach for providing us with the history of Tam Lin. As ever, at the halfway point in the episode, we're going to listen to a few different versions of this song, sung by traditional singers. So what you're going to hear now are versions of Tam Lin from both Willie White and Betsy Johnston, and then the song Lady Margaret from Duncan Williamson, and finally Eddie Butcher's song Saturday Night is Halloween Night.
Oh, for the sea may run dry, and the fishes fly, and the rocks melt with the sun. And if ever I prove false unto you, it's my heart's blood it may run, my dear. It's my heart's blood it may run. When I am on the sea, oh, pray think of me. When I'm far on the foreign shore, for it's hold me fast, forget me not. I'm the father of your child, my dear. I'm the father of your child.
Lady Margaret, Lady Margaret, been sewing at the seam. She looked at it, she looked at west, and she saw those merry greenwoods growing green. She saw those merry greenwoods. First she kilted up her petticoats. It's up to them she ran. At when she came to those merry greenwoods, she pulled the branches down, my dear. She pulled those branches down.
O Lady Margaret, she sat in her high chamber. She was sewing her silken seams, For she looked east, and she looked west, and she saw those woods grow green, grow green. She saw those woods grow green. So picking up her petticoats beneath her Highland gown, and when she came to this merry green woods, there she let them down, down. There she let them down.
Saturday night is holy night, the qualities all to round, and he who has his bride to meet at the 5-mile brig he'll bide. First you'll meet the black, and second you'll meet the brown, and catch the baby the bridal rein, and pull the rider down. And then he got his wife there. Well, this is a man got married, and the fairy stole his bride. And he didn't know how to get her. He couldn't get her no place up nor down, searched every place. But he went to the swing of the fairies, and she told him what to do. She told him, Saturday night is holy night, the qualities all to round, and he who has his bride to meet at the 5-mile brig he'll bide. First you'll meet the black, and second you'll meet the brown, and catch the baby the bridal rein, and pull the rider down.
And you can find the links to those tracks in the show notes. I just want to take a minute or so to tell you about our Patreon side of In the Roud. Over on our Patreon site, we cover songs from a lot further on in the Roud Index. There are just some songs, some really great folk songs, and I'd love to cover them, but by the very nature of going through the index in numerical order, we just will never ever get to them, and so the Patreon is a way to do that. And so our main strand of episodes on Patreon is called Singer's Choice, and these are mini-seasons of 3 episodes each, and it's a chance for one singer guest to come on for 3 episodes, and it's their choice of song, and consequently, almost their choice from somewhere deep in the Roud Index. So far, we've had Singer's Choice mini-seasons from Nancy Kerr, Mossy Christian, Rachel McShane and George Sansom. Also, every year we'll be doing a Carols mini-season too, where we delve into the world of village carols and similar themed songs. Our other strand on Patreon is called Spotlight, and it's a chance for us to delve into some other subjects other than just songs. You know, these subjects such as song collectors, traditional singers, and song collecting in different regions or areas of the country. We've had episodes with like Martin Graeber doing a collector spotlight on Sabin Baring Gould. We had Paul Wilson and Marilyn Tucker come on and talk about song collecting in the region of Devon. And one of the most recent ones was an episode on the subject of broadsides with Steve Roud. And I released that episode for you all to hear as a bonus episode that rounded out season 3 earlier this year. So all that sort of thing. Patreon for us has 2 subscription tiers, £5 per month or £10 per month. For the £10 a month tier, labelled Knights of the Roud Table, that tier will give you access to all of the bonus content, whereas the £5 per month, the Roud Robins, will give you access to just some of the bonus content. If you feel so moved to support the podcast financially and receive bonus content in return, then Patreon is the way to do it. We are currently in the middle of a Singer's Choice mini-season with special guest Jess Arrowsmith, where we cover 3 songs chosen by her. Last time we had an episode on Roud 513, the song Poor Old Horse, with history from Steve Gardam. And this week releasing on the 26th of June, we'll be back with Jess's second choice, Roud 816, A Blacksmith Courted Me, with history from Vic Gammon. Sign up to hear this and more at patreon.com/intheroud. On to the second half of this episode, I spoke with singer Piers Cawley about his history with folk music and his version of the epic saga of Tam Lin. Well, hello and welcome to In the Roud, Piers Cawley. Hello.
Hello, Matthew. How are you? Matthew? Bloody hell.
You are neither Sandra or Nancy Kerr, therefore you do not call me Matthew. Only those two. Not if my mother calls me Matthew anymore, but Sandra and Nancy seem to have a strange kind of motherly view of me and consequently call me Matthew, but it's fine.
I'll blame the formality of this being an interview rather than being down the pub and having a chat.
I'll allow it. That's fine. I am doing fine, thank you very much. The date of this recording, we're about a week ahead of this episode going out, and I am just about recovered from not a long weekend, but a weekend with a couple of long drives in it. My band Culverake played at Gower Folk Festival down in South Wales, in the Gower Peninsula, and we had a great time. We sang well, we did a good workshop, everyone loved it, but it's like a 500-mile round trip.
I hear that the Gower Folk Festival is a great festival and they're very prompt payers.
Indeed so. They've already just paid me now, which is very nice of them.
Well, hey.
So yeah, but it was a 500-mile round trip. So it was a.
Are you melting where you are as well?
Melting a little bit. It's hot. It is hot today. How are you? How's things with you?
It's a bit warm here, and I've had.
Say here for you is Doncaster, isn't it?
Doncaster, yes. I've had plumbing issues today. So we're interviewed with. This is happening an hour later than we planned, because one of my radiators sprang a leak.
Oh dear!
And thankfully, a neighbour is a half decent, half tidy plumber, so it all got sorted. But it was more pain than I want to have to deal with. And I've also got a weird plumbing issue because I'm in the process of having all the teeth in my top set replaced.
Oh wow!
And a tooth got pulled, and it's left a kind of hole from my mouth to my sinuses.
Oh, okay.
And you don't quite realise how much of your understanding of how your voice and stuff works is reliant on the fact that your mouth cavity and your nasal cavity can be sealed completely separately.
Right, sure, yeah.
And things like consonants like p and fricatives f and stuff like that put back pressure in your mouth. And what actually then happens, of course, is because I've got this little hole that goes through to my sinuses, my mouth feels kind of squidgy. And a little air sort of squirts through to my nose, and it's astonishingly disconcerting.
I can imagine.
And it's not, as far as I can tell, it's not affecting my diction that much, but it's. The dentist has told me, steer clear of talking for long periods or singing because we want to try and because every time you put pressure on this little communication, it helps stop it healing. So it's annoying.
Okay. Right. Yeah. Well,
which is why I've not got a new recording of Tam Lin for you.
That's right. We're just using the one from one of your digital EPs, aren't we?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was going to be pretty much the exact same thing anyway. Just sung
it would be
again.
Interesting. I always find it's interesting to sort of like record a thing and then listen to it. Record it again 5 years later and see how much it's changed.
Yeah, that's true. Never mind. Right, so we're here in episode 5 of season 4 already, and we've just heard Amy Leach and myself discussing the history of Tam Lin. Before we come to Tam Lin, from your perspective, from your end, give us a bit of Piers Cawley history and your sort of background, your sort of background with folk music. When did you come to folk music? Your musical upbringing, if there was such a thing. What's the story, Piers Cawley?
You couldn't resist that, could you?
You're the only one that's picked up on that so far. I don't know if you with a few people.
I feel I should go all Chris Packham and try and cram as many song titles into this as possible, but I'm not going to. Singing has just been a thing I've enjoyed for as long as I can remember, and my family's not musical. Mum and Dad, well, Dad was a rugby player, and they sang. So I have a bunch of traditional songs in the sense of learned in that oral thing from father to son, and indeed from mother to son, because my mum knows the words probably better than Dad did, because she used to be doing the catering, and the chaps would go, "Oh no, get the women out of the room," and they would then go and sit behind the hatch in the kitchen, and the hatch was a sort of 3 millimeter thick piece of hardboard, so of course they could hear every bloody word, and they would be joining in with songs that are probably not suitable for. I wonder if they are in the Roud Index. Dinah, show us your legs, Steve. Is it in there? What's the number?
I don't know.
The Hares on a Dicky Dido, the Wild West Show, all sorts of stuff. So yeah, that's a kind of traditional thing. I didn't learn those till Mum and Dad were not teaching me those songs when I was first learning to sing. Let me say,
Right, sure.
That came later. And I used to sing a lot. I sang at school. Mum used to sing, wasn't really a singer, but she sang to us because that was how parents raised kids in the 70s. It's that kind of like singing for kids. And I remember she sang a version of Soldier, Soldier, Won't You Marry Me with your musket, fife and drum, which is a rather sweet Two Wives in the Army kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
That annoyingly I don't remember enough of, or the tune of, to sing. And I'm kind of curious as to whether she would remember enough that I could learn it off her again. And then so I was in school choirs, and I got tapped to be in a church choir, which is I was still a boy soprano. But that's not really folky. And then I went to Scouts, and Scouts had a singing.
They've got songs, haven't they?
Song.
Sort of. They've a bit of singing in their sort of ranks, yeah.
And I learned a lot of the songs there. I kind of became one of the Scout choir masters, as one of the people who knew all of the songs. And our Scout leader, for all his many faults, was from Sunderland and had a version of Laidly Worm.
Right.
Wish lads had your gobs, I'll tell you all an awful story. Wish lads had your gobs, I'll tell you about the worm. Which again, I don't remember enough of. I remember the tune, and he used to sing that occasionally, and so we learned that. And then a friend of my aunt was Kathy. She's now Kathy Barclay, who was in Artisan and Beggar's Velvet.
Oh yeah.
And not Artisan. God no. Bryony. And they made a tape, and they gave Dad had a copy of that tape. And I remember in my sort of mid to late teens, when the Walkmans came in and I got a Walkman, I listened to that tape a lot, and that had some good stuff on, the Otter Hunt and a rather nice modern one called Part-Time Job. So I was kind of like learning these songs, but not really singing them out. Went to university, worked in a bar, and they had a session. And I was also... The other thing about my dad, he would tell you he's tone deaf, but he's not. He just doesn't think he's not a great singer. He had a thing about finding records he liked and then sort of listening back. So he kind of like got into the Rolling Stones and then found out about the blues, and for some reason found out about things like Anna Lomax's recordings from Parchment Farm and the prison song recordings.
Oh, yeah.
And these were in the day. This was in the day when an LP was 30 shillings, which was an awful lot of money for a young lad at school in the 1960s. So they ordered a copy of Prison Songs, the Lomax recordings from Murderer's Home, isn't it? I think it was called. The Parchment Farm recordings for their local record shop. And the local record shop, of course, this was the 1960s, the early 70s, had a listening booth.
Oh, there you go.
So having ordered this record, they went into the listening booth.
You couldn't
to both sides of it, the complete album, and then came out and said, "No, I didn't like it."
Oh dear, that's very good. 30 shillings. 30 shillings though. I was in HMV somewhere recently. Oh, I was in Swansea while I was down at Gower. I popped in for a bit of retail therapy and wandered around Swansea. And yeah, there was a deal on, because you can buy vinyl brand new now at HMV and places, and they had a great deal on 3 for £66. Because basically vinyl are now like 25 each brand new. You know, if you buy like a new pressing or something new now, it's so 3 for 66.
Only Birdsong, Batman.
That's why charity shops for old LPs are the thing.
Or you do what I did. You marry someone with a fantastic folk record collection.
Well, I'll yes,
with a bewildering amount of stuff. I mean, you grew up in a folky family, so I'm presumably your dad's record collection is a thing of beauty and a joy forever, and full of
yes and no
stuff that's still not available on CD.
Yes and no, because he played them a lot, and so a lot of them are scratched beyond belief. Because he'd come home drunk at 2 a.m. and put on the Rolling Stones or something, or whatever, really loud, but he's all bleary-eyed, drunk, and putting the needle on the thing. But nevertheless, what we've got left on LP and cassette are the stuff that never got a re-release, or at least that initial. A lot of the LPs of traditional songs we've still got are those ones which are like a collection of recordings of different singers.
That fell into the hands of Celtic music and
or that all of the tracks eventually made it onto various Voice of the People CDs. So that LP release never got a CD release.
Yeah,
but all the tracks have made it onto other things.
But stuff like Leader and Trailer and
we've got a fair few of them. Yeah,
all those labels that fell into the Celtic music.
That's right.
Ambit.
Got a fair few of them left.
That we'd probably better not talk about because they are litigious, aren't they?
I've got quite a lot of them, but yeah. Anyway, so you were LP 30 shillings.
So Dad had this thing of listening back, and so we had sort of interesting blues records and bits of Jelly Roll Morton and Booker T. Washington and stuff like that, so I got into that habit as well. I was a big fan in my late teens and early 20s of the Waterboys, and the Waterboys are Mike Scott heavily influenced by. This was before they actually went and were Irish and did the Irish folky stuff. Mike Scott heavily influenced by Van Morrison, so I went and bought the Van Morrison album, and it happened to be his current album was Irish Heartbeat with the Chieftains.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And that's got some fantastic stuff on it. And I kind of fell in love with Irishery, and because at the time there was this sing around in the pub that I was working in, I thought I should get something to sing. So from the Irish Heartbeat thing, I went and I thought this will be. I learned Carrick Fergus because obviously that's your first folk song to sing in public, isn't it? I still have a dibble of a time pitching it, but don't sing it that often anymore because I've since sort of got more into the English traditions. And for a long time, I was a sort of plastic paddy. Left university, got involved in London and went to Sharps a few times in the early 90s, and then Northampton Folk Club, Sols and Eels, again mostly singing Irish material, and I think it's there. So by this point I'm kind of identifying as a folk singer, primarily as an Irish folk singer, because my great grandfather was from County Mayo, God help us. And clearly that's far more important than the other 7 great-grandparents that are from all around the British Isles. But, and heard some great stuff at Northampton, including the first time seeing Martin Carthy, and I hated it.
Oh, wow.
It was built up as the saviour, that whole thing. And I just was like,
Yeah.
Wasn't in the mood for that at the time.
He was still. There was once when I found a poster. I showed it to Martin where he was billed as the Godfather of folk.
Yeah.
It's like, what am I going to send someone a horse's head or something? And someone, so someone once described him on a poster as the Leviathan of folk. John Wilkes told me that, like, said he'd seen that somewhere. It's like as if he's some mythical creature, you know.
So because of the build-up, I think,
Yeah.
I was not in a place to enjoy it.
Right.
Saw people like Johnny Collins there. Johnny Collins style for me, when I later came to singing English material, Johnny's approach I found really really interesting. He was a great singer of unaccompanied chorus songs and a brilliant leader of a thing. Really never saw a Johnny Collins gig where he wasn't fabulous. And that kind of affected some years down the line, really, when I started to sing English material. Johnny's style was a thing that I was hugely influenced by. And also it's where I first heard Pete Morton.
Yes.
And my then girlfriend had his first LP, which had Tam Lin on it, which is, I mean, it's Mike Waterson's version with the serial numbers filed off. But I didn't know that at the time. I'd not heard Mike's version. And didn't hear that for some years. I'd probably already learned Tam Lin before I finally heard Mike's version. It was just, holy crap. I think if I'd heard Mike's version first, I would have been far less likely to go, I can do that, because Mike's version is so pyrotechnic.
It's a key moment of that, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah. And then I met Jill at Chippenham Folk Festival in 1994.
Right.
I want to say. No, probably earlier than that, 92. We kind of worked it out. But yeah, we've been together a while. And, I joined in a conversation between bands at the, can't remember what the hotel was, but, never left, really.
There we go.
Just went from living in Carshalton to living in Chelmsford, and then moving around the place, and met you through Jill, because Jill did the folk degree.
And then Jill went to the folk degree, and then what year did Jill join the folk degree?
Oh God, I have ADHD, Matt.
I joined.
Dates are really hard.
I joined in 2008, and I think Jill was.
She was the year below Faye.
Oh, so
or maybe 2 years below.
I think she'd already graduated by the time I turned up. Maybe.
Because Matt Price dragged you along to one of our kitchen table sings.
That's right. Kitchen table sings in Gateshead. Fond memories of that table.
I don't know. She had either just graduated or was going to graduate.
Yeah.
When we first met.
Or maybe had just graduated like that summer. But yeah, but then consequently that's how I met you, because Matt Price, who was in his final year on the degree when I was in my first year, brilliant guitarist and good singer as well. You don't hear him sing much, but he's very good. Yeah. Brought me and a few others along to your usually monthly kitchen table sings.
Jill was in the same year as Matt.
There we go. Sure. Okay, there we go. Final,
pretty sure
overlap by 1 year. So and that's how I met you, and we'd been singing off and on together in a social circumstance ever since, really.
Yeah,
and so we've known each other for 17 years now.
Oh, God, Matthew. Matt, sorry.
No, my God, Matthew. That sounds better. Anyway,
it does in that context, doesn't it?
Indeed, and the rest is history. But so it's been wonderful.
and Tam Lin has kind of been in my repertoire since I kind of started identifying as an English folk singer rather than as a singer of Irish songs, if that makes sense.
Right? Yeah, sure. So I mean, you said so. you've already answered your next question, really, which is when did Tam Lin come into the picture for you? So it was hearing Pete Morton on his first album. Was it Frivolous Love? Was that the first Pete Morton
I
album?
think so,
Yeah.
yeah.
For people who don't know, Pete Morton is still going. He's a phenomenal songwriter, singer, guitarist, songwriter, and this is no disrespect to anyone else who writes songs out there, but Pete is my favourite songwriter.
He's up there, isn't he?
He really is up
Absolutely.
there, and I love his songs so much. And
He wrote Another Train when he was 19.
that's the song that Sally, what's her name from that band?
Sally Barker, yeah.
Sally
yeah.
Barker had a big hit with, and he still gets checks every month.
Excellent.
I think, and then when Sally Barker went on The Voice, so Pete suddenly got loads more checks because
nice.
people started going back to her back catalogue. And anyway, so
And he made, he kind of like, if you're of your age, you probably think of Pete first, foremost, and only as a songwriter.
Indeed, but my parents knew him of a long time before I did, and we've got the early albums.
Yeah, and the early albums were a mixture of his songwriting and traditional material, and he was great into. I mean, he probably still is. He just doesn't do it.
There's the occasional thing. Myself and my duo partner George Sansom are both session musicians on his two most recent albums, and on the most recent one, or maybe it was the one before, one of the two we're on is a new version of Barbara Allen on there.
Oh, fantastic!
So he does do bits of trad stuff, but it's mainly the songwriting. Oh, and he sings Farmer's Boy as well. But he did that. Sorry, and there is an entire album called Trespass that he made of just.
It's a brilliant record. The trouble is, it didn't sell as well as the album he put out around the same time of nothing but his own material.
Yeah, that's right.
And then so he went, well, that's where the bread's buttered.
Yeah,
and you can't blame him.
No, absolutely.
Because I mean, it's not like he's a bad songwriter. He's
a phenomenal songwriter.
It's not like his songs can't sit with the material on Trespass. And there are a few people I can think of who now are working as songwriters, but actually I preferred their approach to traditional material. But Pete's one of those people where his songwriting was so good, you really can't blame him for going, no, I'm gonna, because you don't have to do as much research.
Indeed. And constantly, Pete's first album was in 1987, Frivolous Love. I'm just looking at when Another Train turned up. It's on the second album called One Big Joke. 1988, he recorded that. So, but Tam Lin is track 5 on Frivolous Love, so it's the closer to side A of the vinyl of the LP.
Yeah, I mean, that's where you'd put it, isn't it?
So were you hearing this? Was this song, did you hear this live first, or was this on the LP, do you reckon?
I can't remember if he did it live.
Was it with the guitar, or was it unaccompanied?
My recollection is unaccompanied, but I've not listened to it in years.
All right, fine. I've got the album somewhere. I'll have a listen at some point.
I think it's unaccompanied, because he's singing Mike's tune, and Mike's tune is so lovely and bendy and self-supporting. It doesn't need... a guitar, and I think, and certainly Pete's done more than a few unaccompanied songs in his time, so I think his choice there would have been not to accompany it. But as I say, I'm pretty sure it's not accompanied on Trespass. But I'm going to have to go and. It's really weird, isn't it? It's the album I learned it from. I don't listen to much music. I kind of occasionally go and have a go, but I've got records that I've bought from friends that are still, I'm afraid, in the shrink wrap. Because I just don't. I tend not to listen to music as an activity. Really, I listen to things like your podcast in the car.
Oh, there we go. Anyway, so you heard. Was Pete's version Tam Lin like the only one you'd heard, or not? That was the first one you heard. Was it then the only one you'd heard for quite a while? Or were you suddenly finding other versions of this song around?
For quite a while, yeah. I had learned it pretty much straight Pete's version quite quickly.
Right.
And wasn't really going for looking for it. And it's one of those songs that, I mean, I kind of like, if it weren't for the fact that I do the thing on a Friday night when I'm in good singing fettle, I stream to the internet on YouTube.
Indeed, yes.
the number of occasions I would have to sing Tam Lin in front of an audience is vanishingly small. If you think about
I
it.
have that with the Gordon Hall epic ballads that I do. If
Yeah.
I've got a solo booking at a folk club, I can get away with one per night.
Yes.
And consequently, it has to be the same one because I have to make sure I know it.
Yeah.
But yeah, and there's about 15 of them I want to learn.
So I've not I don't sing it that much, but it is at the same time absolutely probably the core song in my repertoire
Right.
of the I just love it as a song. It's got everything in it. That thing that Amy said about she's one of only 4 women in the child ballads who gets a happy ending, both economically and emotionally.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And that is just, and she is an absolute badass.
Yeah.
So I'm a big reader of fantasy. And there was a series of novels in the 90s called Modern Fairy Tales, edited by Terry Windling, who did the Modern Fairies workshop with Faye and all sorts of interesting stuff there. And one of the books that one of the adaptations, this sort of rose red, and there's a fantastic version of Thomas the Rhymer by Ellen Kushner, which I love dearly. And also a version of Tam Lin by Pamela Dean, which resets it in a liberal arts college in up in the Appalachians in America in the sort of late 80s, 90s. And it's a brilliant retelling. It's highly recommended. But one of the things it had in the sort of front matter was a full set of lyrics, I think, credited to the Oxford Book of Ballads.
Okay.
And I went through that because I thought, I sing that song, like you do. And I thought, not keen on that verse. I definitely prefer the Chasers Wood addressed to the women rather than the don't go bound for Carter or for young Tam Lin is there, but I'll come to that in a bit. And in that, I found the verses about the old knight leaning over the wall and her father going, you look pregnant, love, and her tearing a strip off the old fat knight and being wonderfully defiant of her father about no one here. This lady, this child is not going to have the name of any of the knights of your court, and all that kind of stuff. And I loved that. So I took, oh, and up and spoke an old grey knight leaning over the garden wall. Oh, woe be to you, Lady Margaret, for we'll be blamed all. I will be blamed all. I had your tongue, you odd fat knight, and an ill death may you die. I'll father me bairn on whom I will, shall father none on thee. I shall father none on thee. And kind of with those 2 verses, I found Margaret,
Right, yeah.
Suddenly, Margaret is not a woman to whom the ballad happens. She's a woman that happens to the ballad. And that shaped all the other choices I made about what I was going to sing for that. Because there are a few kind of key choices in here. I mean, the key one is what happens after he takes her by the lily white hand.
Right, okay.
And the version I just have the verse, what they done there, well, I just can't say, for the green leaves came between. And Mike sings both that verse and he never once asked her leave. And I could not square Margaret as rape victim with the Margaret that then tears a strip off the old knight and on being told about the herb growing in the Chasers Wood, immediately runs off to sort out an abortion for herself. I could not square a rape victim then going through all that to save Tam Lin. So that's why the choice I make is that she is a badass through and through. She is told in the first verse, don't go down to the Chaser's Wood if you want to come back a maiden. And the very next verse, she runs down to the Chaser's Wood and pulls a red rose, which is always the symbol of virginity gone. You know, She knows exactly where she's going, what she's going for, and why. And that for me, I can't imagine her any other way. And she then is absolutely runs through the ballad like a dose of salt. She defies everybody. You know, she apart from the snide little cow going moo, she's looking a bit wan. I think she's got a kid. That in the when she comes back to the hall, and she's just a badass throughout. And there are precious few badasses. You have to go and find people like
it's the female
Lady Barnard.
Yeah,
she gets an unfortunate ending, but she knows what she wants. Lady Barnard.
Yeah,
in Musgrave, she knows what she wants.
Yeah, that's true.
And she gets it, and she is defiant to the end. She gets an unhappy ending, but she gets what she wants.
And songs like The Female Highwayman, things like that.
Yes.
You know, there's always sorts of, yes.
Yeah, the Sauvays of this world and that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that verse, more than anything else, sort of reshaped my understanding of the ballad and what I wanted to do with it. And then I don't tend to think about my songs very much, except when I'm singing them. So I mostly find out what I think about a ballad as I'm singing it. So that understanding of, because you're in it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That understanding of something doesn't... I mean, you can sit down and be academic and think about it and do homework about it. And I never did homework as a kid, and I'm not really about to start now.
That's fair.
But in the process of singing it, you kind of find... And at this point, it's all pretty subtle. You know what I mean? It's kind of like... I'm finding as I'm getting older, I'm doing less and less with it. I love the Mike Waterson absolutely pyrotechnic performance of it.
Yeah.
But I am, as much as possible, trying to not impose not consciously impose my understanding of what's happening and my understanding of the feelings of the characters on the way I perform it, because the audience can do that. And part of the thing that I think really engages audiences with this kind of material is when you let them do the interpretation as well. And Tam Lin's great in that way because there's nothing to explain. You know, the number of really great ballads that the singer has to contextualize in some sense, you know, explain 2 or 3 words or set up the milieu in which it's happening or whatever it may be. There's none of that in Tam Lin.
No, it's all plot.
It's all plot, and it's all in plain English. Well, it's in plain Scots, but it's in understandable English, and it's largely understandable motives.
Yeah,
it's not like right, I love Fair Annie to distraction. It's a fantastic song.
Oh yeah, that coming up on the podcast either next season or the season after, I think, Fair Annie.
But the motivations in that are completely alien. I mean, why does he go back and marry her sister? He must know. And you kind of like,
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, we can ask Sandra Kerr that when she comes on in season 5 to talk about Fair Annie. Sandra's doing the history of that one for us in next season, so yeah, we'll come to that.
and I thought so that some of that thing about finding my understanding of the song, I thought it was interesting. What and it's Amy was talking about it being a romantic ballad. I mean, even though it's not a rapey ballad in the form in which I sing it, it's absolutely a heroic ballad, far more than it's a romantic ballad. Right. I mean, it's a romance in the sense that love triumphs and they overcome all their obstacles and have a happy ending. So, in some sense, it's romance.
But then the journey isn't particularly romantic.
Yeah. No, but it's yeah. Oh, I don't know. I mean,
maybe
some modern supernatural romance and stuff like that. I mean,
the
Tam Lin plot. I mean, we're going to talk about revival singers' versions of it.
Yeah.
But the Tam Lin plot, I mean, there's the Pamela Dean Tam Lin, there's a fantastic Diana Wynne Jones, Fire and Hemlock. It crops up in the October Day books by Shauna Maguire. Fantastic use of it. I disagree with some of her conclusions, but that's another. And the Tam Lin plot is a. Someone was saying, Amy mentioned another book that it was in.
Oh yeah, I can't remember what she said.
And it's a great plot, and those are often far more. Certainly, the Pamela Dean version, it's a romance. The Diana Wynne Jones one is a little bit more complicated than that, because Diana Wynne Jones is always a little bit more complicated than that. So yeah, it works as a love story, but I tend to think of it as a heroic ballad, and that kind of like, I thought Amy said something interesting about where ballads were sung and the context in which they were sung, and whether they were sung by women for women or whether they were in a private domain. And my feeling is that a private domain is kind of more likely, because again, even going back, I mean, a long song is probably going to be more welcome when you haven't got the telly.
Yeah,
and you haven't, and people have to do their party piece, and the Victorians had their dramatic recitations that make Tam Lin look short, and all that kind of stuff. But I think that Tam Lin was probably far more often sung by women as almost as a kind of. I don't think it's a warning. I think it's more wish fulfillment. Because I don't think people thought that they were going to get a Janet outcome in their life.
Right, yeah.
In the 1500s, because you kind of like, it's just not going to happen. But it's nice to imagine that some women could do that. It's nice to imagine the outlandish knight, the outwitting of her father with the parrot being a co-conspirator is just. And sort of in the sort of male domain, it's nice to imagine that the girl with whom you exchanged half a ring, when you come back, you're going to put her to the test and she's not going to recognize you. And at the end, you are going to fall into each other's arms and love each other. It's nice to imagine that when you're away on a boat 5 years into a voyage, and God knows when you're going to get back home. I don't think anyone... you're imagining faithfulness there. Sure. And if it happened in reality, she would be absolutely justified in clattering him round the head with a handbag, or doing.
I once heard the American singer Debbie McClatchy at Whitby Folk Week. She explained the plot of one of those things and then said, "I don't agree with that. I think she would have decked him."
Yeah. Or Vicky Fielding, her wonderful take on the Broken Token, where
she wrote a parody of it, didn't she?
Yeah. Where the lover turns out, well, actually, Seek It Out
Yes.
I can't remember what it's called. Vicky Fielding's Broken Token song is a fantastic parody of the whole Broken Token genre, and it's beautiful, and it has a happy ending, and it's the only plausible happy ending to one of those kinds of songs I've ever come across, because usually you're just thinking she'd clatter him, she'd surely clatter him.
Yeah.
But I mean, that plot's Martin Guerre, isn't it? And ish, because Martin Guerre's weird because he's not. Anyway. So yeah, I tended to think that these songs were sung by women, and I sent you that link, and I'm going to read some of it from.
Oh yes.
This is a piece that Heather Wood found in the Gentleman's Magazine in 1735. The scandalous practice of ballad singing is the bane of all good manners and morals, a nursery for addicts, whores, and pickpockets, a school for scandal, smut, and debauchery, and ought to be entirely suppressed or reduced under proper restriction. If ballads do not, yet they ought to come under the Stamp Act, and the law looks on ballad singers as vagrants. It brings to my mind the ill conduct of many of our middling gentry who suffer their children, particularly their daughters, to frequent the kitchen, be familiar with the servants, and so learn their manners. One part of their conversation turns upon frightful stories of witches, apparitions, etc., which serve to keep Miss in awe and in their interest. And there's this whole rant about how Miss hearing these ballads in which the coachman runs away with his mistress or whatever it may be, suddenly might herself feel moved to run away with the mistress. And it's just a delightfully rant. I'm sure Matt can link it in the show notes because he bloody well should, because it's great.
Yeah, we'll do.
But it's and that's sort of that bloke inveighing against women singing and listening to ballads, and the lower classes in particular singing and listening to them.
It's that scare, that sort of fear that women might suddenly get ideas. And I think,
my God, women might have agency.
And I think the problem over the last few hundred years is that men did get quite a lot of ideas, and that's probably the worst option. If you take my meaning. So yeah, it's a weird thing.
I mean, there's nothing more terrifying for the men than a woman with agency, is there? It's just, the oh, I could get quite Sandra at this point.
Yes, we'll leave that to Sandra. She's good at that, which is great. Yeah, right. Okay, no, this is all fascinating stuff. Anything else you want to talk about, or before we go on to the recommended listening? I mean, there probably is, but how much is there left that we can fit into this discussion?
You just wound me up and set me going there, didn't you? That kind of like... it's amazing. I never find out what I'm thinking until I say it. The other thing about... There's something Amy said about you can sing it to any tune. And, it goes to the House of the Rising Sun surprisingly well.
I'm just reading a set of lyrics now, and House of the Rising Sun. Yeah, I can tell that.
Yeah. And the trouble is, I had a go at it, and I can sing it to the House of the Rising Sun. The problem is, the House of the Rising Sun tune is too strict, and it's too
formal.
It's too intense. You know how that amazing version by Frankie Armstrong?
Yeah.
To sing about Frankie Armstrong's version of Tam Lin, go and listen to it. It's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
But I have no idea how she maintains that intensity through the entire song. It's astonishing. And the tune that Mike... I don't know if it's Mike found it. I'm terrible at remembering who's singing the same tunes. The tune that Mike sings and that Pete sings is wonderfully. It's not quite boring, but it's not interesting.
It's not the most exciting of melodies, but somehow it's also quite good.
Yeah, but it's that thing about if the tune's interesting. Over 10 minutes, it will become boring. It will become kind of a bit of a cliche. if you're that's sort of a problem I have with some of the accompanied versions of Tam Lin. Yeah. But I would encourage anyone to have a go at learning this. I don't know about you with these big ballads. People talk about it's a feat of memory. And I honestly, it kind of isn't, because the story is so propulsive.
Yeah, the story. Let you get the story, it's fine.
This Little Musgrave, Fair Annie, so many of these storytelling ballads, you will find it surprisingly easy to learn.
Yeah.
And then have a go and trust the song and your ability to convey it, because you don't actually have to be flash, because the song itself is so powerful. I've sung Tam Lin more often at open mics, completely unaccompanied, probably, than I've sung it as a floor spot in a folk club. Because there are precious few folk clubs where you are going to do that.
Yeah, you're in the vein of annoying MCs by doing a 10-minute floor spot, especially if they only want one song, you know.
Yeah, or in a sing-around, you might get away with it. And I mean, I've done it in sing-arounds and
it depends on how many people there are there and what...
Especially at clubs I'm not coming back to.
It depends on the vibe of the evening and how many people are there and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Basically, what I always tell people who would sing songs in sing-arounds or whatever, just read the room. You know, that's basically what you have to do.
Yeah.
You know, so...
But more often, an open mic, they give you 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Generally, you get 15 minutes to do whatever the hell you like. And,
I know. I did. When was this? It wasn't an open mic, but Whitby Folk Week for a long time, or it might still do. But they do like the Sunday afternoon at the Spa Theatre venue. They do a folk degree showcase, past and present alumni who happen to be at the festival.
Yeah.
And it's normally a load of present students things. But Sandra Kerr used to MC it all the time, and she'd always get me in as a past alumnus. Alumnus is past, isn't it? As an alumnus. And she just said, you do 10 minutes. And so I just sang Gordon Hall's Lord Bateman, which is Lord Beckett. I just did that because I started the song, and then Sandra went backstage to prep the next artist, and she came back into the wings, and I was still singing the same bloody song.
Yeah.
She hadn't realised I was doing one song, and I thought, well, I'll just do that one then. No need for learn anything else. I'll just do that one. So, if it works, it works, you know.
And certainly on more than a couple of occasions, I've literally, with an open mic crowd, you'd think... folk clubs have this idea that that ballads are long and boring. And they're bloody well not.
Indeed.
They are long, but...
but not boring.
They're really not boring.
Well, there are some, but in general, they're not boring.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing that leaves me in awe of Spires and Bowden is that they managed to make Prickle Eye Bush the most boring song imaginable into an encore piece and make it thrilling.
And make it into essentially Bellowhead's hit.
Yes, and that is astonishing. But, you know, I've sung Tam Lin to a completely non-folk audience. And you have a huge advantage when singing big ballads to a non-folk audience. They've never bloody heard it. They don't know how it ends. And if you're half competent and at an open mic, you are almost certainly the only person singing completely unaccompanied.
Yeah.
And the sound person has already gone, you haven't got a backing tape. No, just give me a microphone, a bit of compression, I'll be all right. You're already a bit unusual. And I promise you, they will listen and they will enjoy it and they will be engaged by it and they will not be bored.
Well, on the folk scene, I think there's a certain, not quite stigma, but Tam Lin is synonymous with being long. And consequently, if you announce to a folk club audience that you're going to sing Tam Lin, maybe not externally, but there will be some internal sort of, Tam Lin again, you know, really long. It's 10 minutes, you know, and all this sort of.
It's got a bloody chorus. You can join in.
I know, and so consequently,
it's got a refrain.
It has got a bit of a. a little bit of stigma on the folk scene just because it's known for being one of the longest ones that people like to sing, and consequently, if someone says they're going to sing it, people do go, "Oh no, it's Tam Lin." But it's I hate that about the folk scene. It's one of the things I really do hate about the folk scene is that.
Yeah. You're far better off just starting to sing it,
Yeah,
and not giving it any talk up because it doesn't need it. And there are. We're going to talk about the revival performances,
Yeah.
and there's any number of revival performances where
well, let's do that. Let's do that then. Yeah,
recordings where I'm not going to name names, but where you get the impression that the singer or the band or someone in their management lacks confidence in the song, so they
sure.
dress it up with a band arrangement.
Sure, yeah.
I've never been, and this is purely about my taste, De Gustibus and all that. I have never been a big fan of Steeleye in general.
Okay.
I love the individual musicians in Steeleye.
Yeah.
Maddie is one of the all-time great voices and a lovely woman to boot. But I listened to the Steeleye version of Tam Lin, I think for the first time in prep for this. You go through iTunes and look for versions of Tam Lin, and you can't really avoid Steeleye.
Steeleye Span, yeah.
And the Fairport Convention version has a similar, for me, issue.
But then with Steeleye Span, it's a much later addition to their repertoire because it's. I mean, we're talking literally decades after the Martin Carthy Steeleye Span era,
right?
Because Tam Lin came in the 90s, and for a lot of people, I mean, Steeleye's still going, and I think a lot of it's great. I think still, but for a lot of people, I think the key, not necessarily best or worst, but a very key Steeleye stuff is the late 60s, early 70s when it's Martin Carthy and the surrounding non-Martin Carthy stuff. And so, but Steeleye did it a lot later. But Fairport Convention did it in the late 60s. It's on Legion Leaf, 1969, Legion Leaf.
Both of those versions, I find myself thinking, I just want to hear Sandy or Maddie's just singing it unaccompanied, because they've got clearly, you can hear from the way they're singing it, they clearly have a brilliant unaccompanied version of it in them. And the band arrangement just, for me, serves as a distraction. So there are a few of that sort of stuff where the smacks of a lack of confidence in something.
Sure, yeah.
And I'm not even sure on whose part. And I think it's a great shame, because I think that many of these ballads are, at their best, utterly unadorned.
I reckon so, yeah.
Although that said, some of my favourite versions that we're going to go through are accompanied versions. I'm nothing if not contradictory, Matt.
Indeed. Right. Well, let's go through some. So we have already mentioned Pete Morton. That's his 1987 album, Frivolous Love,
and it's also on Trespass.
I don't think it is actually.
Trespass.
I don't think it is. I did check a second ago. It's not. No.
Oh, right, okay.
No, it's just on Frivolous Love.
But you should listen to Trespass.
Yeah.
If you're remotely interested in Pete singing unaccompanied material and traditional material, his version of the Gay Goshawk is just magnificent.
And he uses a guitar to accompany a lot of those trad songs on Trespass, and then he makes them, not in a bad way, he makes them sound as if he wrote them. He turns them into, in quotes, Pete Morton songs without even trying, just the way he naturally delivers the songs.
And it's not remotely Martin Carthy-esque or Nick Jones-esque,
no,
or Martin Simpson-ish. It's Pete Morton-ish, and I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely.
There aren't many people sort of working in the shadow of Nick and Martin can manage to do that.
Indeed.
So it's always a joy.
But yeah, and then 10 years earlier, 1977, that's the self-titled album Mike Waterson, by Mike Waterson, and 1977, and Tam Lin is the opening track of the second side of the LP.
If you haven't got a copy of that record, you just sort your life out and do it, because it's just the sheep stealer on there.
It is astonishingly good, And yeah, so there are plenty other revival ones. Let's do a not quite a whistle stop, a shopping trolley dash, but we'll
Yeah.
spend a couple of seconds on each one. Who have you got to recommend further?
Well, let's go with Ewan McCall's version. It pains me to say it, but it's brilliant. Unaccompanied. It's very Ewan McCall. And yeah, when he was good, he was very, very good.
And that's so yeah, Ewan McCall sang that. That's on his and Peggy Seeger's album Cold Snap from 1977,
All right.
same year as Mike Waterson.
All right, okay. I wish I'd seen Ewan and Peggy in their pomp, because Peggy's writing about how they used to perform with no set lists and no idea what the other was going to sing. That must have been a magnificent thing to see.
And that's Ewan unaccompanied. The main author lists all of the personnel on that album, including which tracks they played with instruments, and that track is only listed as Ewan McCall vocals. Yeah, but that album is Peggy Seeger, Ewan McCall, Neil McCall, Callum McCall, and two members of the Oyster Band, Ian Telfer and Alan Prosser as well.
It's a great version, and it's got kind of all the verses in it.
Yeah.
It's
how long is it? It's 9 minutes. So yeah, it's a decent. But yes, 1977, same year as Mike Waterson.
And sort of similar sort of vein of kind of the long storytelling version. Archie Fisher does a great version. Again, lots of verses, not a rapey version. But Frankie Armstrong is magnificent.
Yeah, Archie Fisher's one comes from a 1998 BBC radio performance, but it's included on a big anthology CD called Big Bend Killing.
Big Bend Killing.
The Appalachian ballad tradition. That's a 2 CD set, came out in 2017, and the 1998 BBC recording is on there of Archie Fisher. Frankie Armstrong, you mentioned. That's on 1976, only a year before Ewan and Mike did theirs. Yeah. Here's a Health to the Man and the Maid, 1976.
And Frankie has an interesting... I think she wrote another song about the second girl, the one who knew about the herb growing in the wood.
Oh, yeah.
Because she's a really interesting character. I think Frankie has interesting things to say about that.
She's a very well-respected authority on most things, folk song singing and unaccompanied singing and folk song related, yeah.
I know there's an Anne Briggs version. I'm sure I've heard it, but I don't remember it, which is bizarre because it's Anne Briggs, so it must have been magnificent.
Indeed, yes, Anne Briggs.
I'm going to have to seek it out and listen to it again. In the sort of more traditionally vein, and probably nearer to the songs and versions you discussed with Amy, Moira Craig's version is beautiful, short, gorgeous tune. Moira is a lovely singer. Catch her in the Volley at Sidmouth. Pretty much every year. Beautiful, beautiful Scottish singer, and she produced an album called On a Bonny Day, full of lovely stuff, including this lovely short version of Tam Lin.
That's right, and her version is the one from Betsy Johnson, which is one of the two singers that Amy mentioned on that CD called The Muckle Sangs.
And it's a lovely tune. It's real.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And then there are some versions with instrumentation that I quite like, which always surprises me. Inez Mitchell's version with Jeff Hamer is a lovely. All the supernatural stuff's gone. There's no fairies, and it's fantastic.
That's a whole They did a whole album called Child Ballads, didn't they? In 2013.
Yeah.
And it's only 7 tracks, but then most of them are over 6 minutes each. So it ends up being 7 tracks, but it's probably about 42 minutes or something. Probably the usual album.
I saw her at the Nick Jones tribute gig at the Festival Hall, and she was great.
Oh yeah.
There is the least likely band in the world to do a version of Tam Lin would be Tickled Pink.
Oh,
the Cawley band.
Yeah, man, fronted by Simon Kerr.
Simon Kerr, yeah, and it's on Terpsichore something or other. I can't remember the exact title. and it's
Oh no, it's on their their eponymous album, Tickle Pink.
yes, and it's oh God, you can tell they're a dance band, and you can. I mean, the thing about Tickle Pink is that they are they went away to Ibiza on summer holiday and came back completely changed, and their approach to English dance music is. Oh, it's wonderful. They were a hell of a dance band. And this version of Tam Lin it should be awful. It's funked up. It's got samples. It's got some Tam Lin, Tam Lin. And it ought to be awful and it's magnificent.
Oh, there we go. Tam, yeah.
I think it primarily existed to piss off the old folk god. And I don't know if it did, but I absolutely love it. And it's
well, you get some songs that do annoy the old guard. The Oyster Band in 1986 with their rocky version of Hal and Toe certainly ruffled a few feathers.
Yeah, and indeed the fabulous version of the New Order. I want to see my family, my wife and child waiting for me. I've got to go home. I've been so long.
Oh yeah.
You see. So, I mean, it's great, but yeah, that was great.
Yeah, Tickle Pink, but that was in 1993 for Tickle Pink.
Yeah.
Give us one more, and then I've got a list.
Right. Okay. And then there are the sort of I will probably lead you into there's the 37-minute folk rock cantata.
You sent me this, and I listened to a few minutes and thought, maybe I'll listen to the rest of it sometime.
I listened to the whole thing.
Oh, wow. Great. Well done.
It's hilarious.
And what's the band called for them?
I'm not going to link to it because I don't want necessarily them to find me being spectacularly rude about all their choices. If you want to find it, there is only one 37-minute folk rock cantata based on Tam Lin. So you will find it.
Okay.
And then a folk band called Tricky Pixie do a great version, rocked up. And there's a fantastic adaptation by a band called the Forget-Me-Naughts, as in astronauts, that's a rewrite from, I think it's from Janet's point of view, and it basically starts with Tam Lin arriving in a dive bar and his ex being all transformy on him. And it's wonderfully, it's very, very American punky, and all the better for it. And I can't recommend it highly enough. And that probably leads you into the Imagine Village, doesn't it?
Well, there is the Imagine Village, yes. This is one of those big sort of super projects founded by the late and much missed Simon Emerson, who died a couple of years ago now, March of 2023. It's been 2 years already. And yeah, Martin and Eliza Carthy are on it, providing a lot of the really sort of trad side of things.
There's also Martin doing Come On, Feel the Noise.
And yes, you're quite right, of course. Martin Carthy did sing the cover of Come On, Feel the Noise by Slade on that album. But that's a collective of people: Martin, Eliza Carthy, Chris Wood, Billy Bragg originally, Sheila Chandra, and the young Coppers. The Copper family were in it for a bit, and Johnny Kelsey, Shima Mukherjee, who was on the new Martin Carthy album. And then Jackie Oates came in the band later on. And even I performed with them once on stage at the Brighton Dome. I was very pleased about that. But yeah, Tam Lin is there on...
That's a Ben Zephaniah rewrite, and it's magical.
Yes, it's called Tam Lin Retold. And it's Benjamin Zephaniah and Eliza Carthy and the rest of the band. So yeah, I recommend that one as a thing. And then I want to bring up... my Culverake colleague, that's quite hard to say because I've edited out me mispronouncing it already. Seb Stone did it on his his first album, his most recent, his debut album from last year called Young Tam Lin's Away. And it's on there with some ethereal instrumentation on fiddle, shooty box, Elian pipes, and all sorts of weird things. So big up Seb Stone, my band Culverake. Our illustrious history guest for this episode, Amy Leach, is in a duo with a fantastic guitarist called Alistair Paul, who were both on the folk degree a couple of years below me. And they did a 2024 EP called Six Sangs, basically 6 songs, so Scots songs, and it's on there called Lady Margaret. Amy sings brilliantly, and Alistair does some great bouzouki, I think, and guitar accompaniment to songs. So really good stuff there. And then you mentioned Anne Briggs briefly. John Bowden sang this. I don't think he's ever recorded it, but it's certainly in his.
No, I think it's on one of the folk song a days, isn't it?
Yeah, so he includes it on his Folk Song a Day, but I don't think he ever actually recorded this on an album or anything. But he basically sings the Anne Briggs one. It's essentially the Anne Briggs one. And I've heard him do it live. The final ever, because John's folk club just outside Sheffield in Dungworth is Royal Traditions, and it was always held at the Royal Hotel in Dungworth, the famous pub where all the carols happen. And since the pub closed, the carols moved to the village hall in Dungworth, as did Royal Traditions. And the very last ever Royal Traditions club night that was held at the pub was February of 2023, or maybe it was 2024, and the booked guest was Faye Heald, at one time partner of John's, and they have 2 children. There's a couple of stories here. Their kids were sung to sleep most nights by John and Faye, alternating singing Tam Lin. So there's that.
One of the best nights I've ever had in a session was in the back room at the Cumberland Arms.
Oh yeah,
where it was
in Newcastle, yeah.
In Newcastle, that Wednesday night session at the Witches' Wells it used to run, and it ended up with being me, Alistair Anderson, who sang.
It has been known.
Faye and John, and Sandra Kerr, and we just went around the room.
Yeah,
and Faye beat me to Tam Lin, and sang an absolutely blistering version of it. Her version of it is fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's the same one that John sings because they both sang it to their kids to sort of get them to sleep. That's a cunning plan with seeing kids to sleep with a Tam Lin. You only have to sing it once to get them to sleep. Because it's so long. But that final ever Royal Traditions club night, and Faye was the guest. And for me, the highlight of that entire night was when she invited John up, and they sang together in 2-bar harmony the entirety of Tam Lin.
Oh yes, because I arrived late. I think I arrived. That was in the second half, wasn't it? They did that. Yeah, that was brilliant.
Yeah, you were there. I've forgotten that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was great to hear John and Faye sing together. But John, it's on his Folk Song a Day project, and it's practically, I think there might be slightly different, but essentially the Anne Briggs one. That's all of the recommended listening for this episode. But I do want to point people towards another podcast. Last season on the podcast, we had as our singer guest for the Sir Lionel or the Wild Boar or Bold Sir Rylus episode, our singing guest was John Wilkes, and we talked a bit there about his podcast series, which In the Roud has kind of taken up the mantle from in a way. John Wilkes had the Old Songs podcast, which is kind of doing the exact same thing we're doing, but not anymore. And there was one episode where Jim Moray was the guest on that, and the song subject for that episode was Tam Lin. And I'll put a link to that episode in the show notes as well.
I can't recommend John's writing on traditional music highly enough. He's a great writer.
Yeah.
And that podcast was great.
Yes, absolutely. Really great podcast.
I mean, he's kind of backpedal on the writing because the music career's taken off, which is fantastic for him. But tradfolk.co, which is now in new capable hands, there's an awful lot of really good material in there.
Absolutely. And In the Roud is forever doffing its cap to the Old Songs podcast for what came before.
And of course, listeners, there's your version.
Mine? My version?
No. Listeners.
Yes.
I'm addressing the listener.
Oh, I see.
Here.
Okay.
Get out there, learn it, have a go. There is. We need more people to do this unaccompanied folk singing lark. It's nowhere near as hard as you think it is, and it's an absolute joy and a pleasure to sing for people. And Tam Lin's a great. I mean, it's a big long ballad, but it's a great ballad to learn because it's got lots of joining in bits. It's got it rattles along, and it's surprisingly easy to remember. You have a go.
Yeah,
it's not recommend.
It's just
you having a go.
It's just a story. It's just a plot.
Yeah.
I remember seeing. This is a side note. We'll end with this. I remember seeing the trio of Martin Carthy, Norman Waterson, and Chris Parkinson, who played Melodian and piano recording, still does, lives in Whitby. As a trio, they used to go out as a trio, and they came to our folk club in Lewes, the Royal Oak Folk Club, which you visited once, I remember.
Yep.
And they did a gig there, and they did lots of trad stuff as usual, all the big Norma Waterson numbers. But they did a Tom Waits song, and halfway through it, Norma forgot the words, and she said, and there was a moment where she sort of panted, and then she said to the audience, "It hasn't got a story. I can't remember where I am in the song because there's no story."
Yes.
And I just think, that encapsulates so much of that. But yeah.
Oh, God. The number of times learning non-ballads.
Non-story songs.
Where you have to kind of like mentally force a story onto it.
Or list songs or...
working out how it develops in some way so that it's memorable.
Or learning a list song or learning... The hardest song I've had to memorise for anything in terms of me... The number of times I've performed it to people and got it wrong because there's no plot is the song Mamma Mia.
Yeah.
Because because the words of both verses are interchangeable and there's no plot. Anyway.
I tried to learn Peter Bellamy's setting of Anchor Song, the Rudyard Kipling one, Hey Walk Around.
Yeah.
Just
hard to do.
Oh.
But if there's a plot, you can do it. And Norma Waterson always held on to the story of the song, and if there isn't a story and she messed up the words, it was so difficult.
She'd narrate the story until the verse came back.
It was so difficult that she found it really difficult to get back into where she'd left off. But that's just the way it goes with a lot of people. We'll draw things to a close there. Thanks so much for coming on and doing this. It's been great to.
Thanks for having me.
We chat quite a lot, but it's always good to chat with you about things like this. And well, I'm sure we might see you again at some point on the podcast. Yeah. There are a lot of songs to cover.
Absolutely. Have you got any gigs coming up? Because I haven't.
No. Oh, yeah, I've got some festivals with Culverake, but they don't need to hear about that. If you've got nothing coming up, that's a shame. Are you doing more of your Friday night YouTube streams?
I will be once
your teeth
squashy mouth has stopped being squashy.
Oh, well, I'll beam in for some of them, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And I did a couple of those in person, didn't I?
You did, yeah.
Do another
great.
One. Yeah.
Great fun. We should definitely do it again.
Yes, absolutely. But in the meantime, Piers Cawley, thank you very much.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I've found out more about Tam Lin. It's great.
Cheers.
I forbid you maidens all under warning take by me. Don't go down to the Chaser's Wood. If a maid you want to return, return. If a maid you want to return. Lady Margaret, she's sitting in the hall. Her cheeks as red as the rose, and she's run down to the Chaser's Wood to pull them flowers that grow and that grow. To pull them flowers that grow. But she had not pulled a rose, but barely 3, when a voice said, "Lady, how dare you touch a rose without no leave of me and of me, without no leave of me?" "Well, these woods," she says, "they are me own. Me father, he gave 'em to me, and I'll bend and I'll bow and I'll break a branch. Shall ask no leave of thee. I shall ask no leave of thee." When he's taken her by the lily white hand to where the grass it grows so green, and what they done there, well, I just couldn't say, for the green leaves came between, the green leaves came between. Now there's 24 maidens, they're all sitting in the hall, their cheeks as red as the rose, all except for Lady Margaret. It's pale and wan she goes, 'tis pale and wan she goes. Yes, there's 24 maidens, they're all sitting in the hall, all playing at the chess, all except for Lady Margaret, who's green as any grass. She's as green as any grass. And up and spoke one of them girls, and on her face was a smile, saying, "I think my lady's loved a little long, and now she goes with child, and now she goes with child." And up and spoke an old grey knight, leaning over the garden wall, "Oh, woe be to you, Lady Margaret, for we'll be blamed all, blamed all, we'll be blamed all. I had your tongue, your fat night, and an ill death may you dee. I'll father me bairn on whom I will, shall father none on thee, on thee. I shall father none on thee. And up and spoke another of them girls, and a pretty little maid was she, saying, I know a herb grows in the chaser's wood, 'twill twine the babe from thee and from thee, 'twill twine the babe from thee. And Lady Margaret, she has taken out her silver comb, and she has combed her hair, and then she's run down to the chaser's wood as fast as she could tear, as fast as she could tear. But she hadn't pulled the one bitter herb, the herb that grows there in the long, when she heard Tam Lin behind her saying, Margaret, leave it alone, oh sweetheart, Margaret, leave it alone. Why do you want that bitter, bitter herb, the herb that grows there in the grey, except for to twine away the pretty little baby that we got in our play, that we got in our play? Well, tell me this, Tam Lin, she says, whether a mortal man you be. Well, I'll tell you the truth without a word of a lie. I got christened as good as thee, and as thee, got christened as good as thee. But as I rode out on a bitter, bitter day, it's from a horse I fell, and the Queen of the Elvins did take me into yonder green wood to dwell and to dwell, and to yonder green wood to dwell. And every seventh year we pay a toll to hell, and the last to come in is the first to go. And tonight the tolls me sell, tonight the tolls me sell, for tonight it is the Halloween, when the elven court must ride, and if you would your true lover save, by the old mill bridge you must bide and bide, by the old mill bridge you must bide. And first there'll come a black horse, and then there'll come a brown, they'll both race by the wide. You must throw your arms around my neck, and they must not hear a fright, no, they must not hear a fright. And they'll change me then, and it's all in your arms, to many's the beast that's wild. You must hold me close, you must fear me not, I'm the father of your child, you know I am, father of your child. Well, the woods grew dark, and the woods grew dim, Tam Lin was gone, and she's picked up her lily white feet, and to the old mill bridge she has run and run, to the old mill bridge she has run. But she's looked high, and she's looked low, she's compassed all around, and she nothing saw, she nothing heard, she's heard no mortal sound, nor sound, she's heard no mortal sound. But at the darkest hour of that night she heard a bridal bell ring. It pierced her heart, gave her a start, more than any mortal thing, anything, more than any mortal thing. And first there come a black horse, and then there come a brown, they both raced by the white. She threw a cloak about Tam Lin's neck, and did not give a fright, no, she did not give a fright. Well, thunder rolled across the skies, the stars shone bright as day, and the Queen of the Elvins gave a trilling cry, Tam Lin's away, away, oh, Tam Lin's away. And they've changed him then, and it's all in her arms to a big black dog to bite, and she's held him close, she's feared him not. He didn't her a fright, no, he didn't her a fright, and they've changed him again, and it's all in her arms to a big black hissing snake, and she's held him close, she's feared him not. He's one of God's own make, he's one of God's own make, and they've changed him again, and it's all in her arms to a white hot bar of iron. She's held him close, she's feared him not. He's done to her no harm, he's done to her no harm, and they've changed him again, and it's all in her arms to a lion roaring wild, and she's held him close, she's feared him not. He's the father of her child, she knew he was father of her child, and they've changed him at last, and it's all in her arms to a mother naked man, and she's thrown her arms around his neck, saying, Tam Lin, we've won, love, we've won, my love. Tam Lin, we've won. Well, the Queen of the Elvins, how she cursed young Tam Lin, oh, how she cursed him good. Oh, when you was mine, I should have plucked out your eyes and put into eyes of wood. I put into eyes of wood. Yes, curses upon you, Tam Lin, she says. You once was my very own, and when you was mine, I should have plucked out your heart and put in a heart of stone, cold stone. Put in a heart of stone.
That was Piers Cawley singing Tam Lin, which brings this episode to a close. What did you think? What are your thoughts on this song? Everyone should give this one a go. I'd love to hear from you. If you'd like to get in touch with me, feel free to drop me an email at intheroud@singyonder.co.uk or visit the podcast on the various social media platforms. We're on Facebook, X, Instagram, Threads and Blue Sky. Just search for In the Roud, a folk song podcast. If you are enjoying the podcast, I would really appreciate it if you could give us a little rating and review on wherever you get your podcasts from. On places like Apple Podcasts, that's a star rating out of 5, and you can write reviews there as well. It takes 30 seconds. On YouTube, places like that, it's a like button, like a thumbs up button or a thumbs down button. Preferably press the thumbs up button, please. And you can write comments under the video as well. And it should be a similar system to one of those two wherever you're listening to your podcasts. All podcast apps are available. In the Roud is a media partner to Veteran, the traditional music label. This week's song is included on just one of their releases, an album called Put Another Log on the Fire, where it's sung by Duncan Williamson, but under the title of Lady Margaret if you're looking for it. You can find this album and more on their website, veteran.co.uk. One last huge thanks to this week's guests, Amy Leach and Piers Cawley. Join me next week for episode 6 of this season. We'll be looking at Roud 36, which is child ballad number 46. That's the song Captain Wedderburn's Courtship. Joining me on the song history side will be a return visit from Steve Roud himself, and my singer guest will be Barbara Snape. Until then, that's it from me. Stay safe, be well, and I'll see you next time in the Roud.